Snow fell cold on a bitter night. John was gone for the morning light. They blame Karen, but it don't sit right. Too many secrets hid from sight. Oh, the badge runs deep, the law runs thin. They stack the deck, but truth won't bend. The judge looks away, the truth gets drowned. Ain't no justice in Canton Town. Proctor's story shifts and sways. Cameras vanish, records fade. The Alberts toast while the doubts grow strong. The folks still fight, won't be long. Oh, the badge runs deep, the law runs thin. They stack the deck, but truth won't bend. The judge looks away, the truth gets drowned. Ain't no justice in Canton Town. Proctor's story shifts and sways. Cameras vanish, records fade. The Alberts toast while the doubts grow strong. The folks still fight, won't be long. Oh, the badge runs deep, the law runs thin. They stack the deck, but truth won't bend. The judge looks away, the truth gets drowned. Ain't no justice in Canton Town.
Good morning, everybody, and hello. We are on day 463 of this trial. Good morning, Jamie.
Morning, lady. How's everybody doing?
And we get to start right off with Crash Daddy number 1.
How exciting.
I know. I hope everybody enjoyed their day off. And forgive me for being a little late. Mom duty.
It happens.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All persons having anything to do before the Honorable Beverly Canoni, the Justice of the Superior Court, holding in Dedham, within and for the County of Norfolk. Draw near, give your attendance, and you shall be heard. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This court is in session. Please be seated.
All right. Good morning, counsel. Good morning, Ms. Reed. And good morning, jurors. Good morning. So happy Friday. I do have to ask you those same 3 questions. Were you all able to follow the instructions and refrain from discussing this case with anyone since we left yesterday, day before? Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Were you also able to follow the instructions and refrain from doing any independent research or investigation into the case? Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Did anyone happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case since we left the other day? No? Everyone said no. Okay, I understand we have a witness this morning.
We do, Your Honor.
Okay. Yes.
Dr. Dan Wolf.
Okay.
Dr. Wolf in the house. I am going to turn the volume up, or is the volume okay for everybody?
For me, just a bit.
But we'll see how. Thank you, Tom.
AJ tends to walk away from the mic a lot.
All right.
You solemnly swear the evidence given before the jury will be that evidence to be true, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, sir, we're going to try and keep the keep the air conditioning on this morning, so I'm going to ask you to speak really loudly into that microphone. And Mr. Jackson, you do so as well, please, okay?
Of course, Your Honor. Dr. Wolf, could you please state your entire name and spell your last name for the jurors, please?
Daniel Michael Wolf, last name spelled W-O-L-F-E.
May I inquire, Your Honor?
Yes.
Dr. Wolf, what do you do for a living, sir?
I am the director of accident reconstruction at a company known as ARCA, A-R-C-C-A.
And I'm going to start right off the bat. Get really comfortable with that microphone. It's adjustable. Pull it right close to the area of your chin. It's really loud in here.
Okay.
Dr. Wolf, you said you work for ARCA, A-R-C-C-A. What is ARCA?
ARCA is a forensic engineering consulting firm. We have a variety of disciplines: accident reconstruction, which is the group I'm a part of, biomechanics, failure analysis, and crashworthiness.
And you said that your title again, one more time?
The director of the accident reconstruction team.
And what sort of contracts does ARCA normally engage in routinely?
So in addition to our forensic consulting work, we have, going back in time, we've dealt with doing contracts with the Department of Defense, where we designed energy-absorbing seats for MRAP vehicles, mine-resistant armored protective vehicles, where these vehicles were going over explosive devices, and the energy from those explosions was going through the vehicle into the occupant. So ARCA designed energy-absorbing seats to help mitigate the injuries in that type of in those types of incidents. We also do work for the National Hockey League. I myself am part of that work. It has to do with scanning and analyzing player pads, but we certainly do impact testing and help set guidelines for player safety.
With regard to those MRAP vehicles, was that contract for the Department of Defense for the United States government?
Yes, sir.
For the military?
Correct.
Is ARCA both nationally and internationally recognized as a leader in accident reconstruction?
Sustained.
Does ARCA have a reputation, or let me ask it this way, does ARCA entertain or engage both domestic and international contracts and clientele?
Yes.
As the director of accident reconstruction, do you specialize in anything other than just accident reconstruction, anything having to do with human factors?
Yes, so my other specialties in addition to accident reconstruction are lighting and human factors.
What is, give us a 25-word overview of human factors. What is that?
So to give you a good example of that is, and again, this is a case that I commonly see, but let's say you're driving down the road at night. It's an unlit roadway. You're relying on your vehicle headlights to see the roadway ahead, right? And you've got a pedestrian that is entering the roadway. And you want to have an understanding based upon the lighting conditions, how much sky illumination there is, their clothing, right? When would a driver recognize that individual on the roadway? So that's where it starts from the vision aspect of human factors. Then we get into driver response, right? So the driver is presented with a hazard. So how do drivers typically respond to that? What are their actions and how long does that take to avoid and initiate a reaction?
That's human factors. Can you do the same thing and give us an explanation for accident reconstruction just in the broadest sense? What is that discipline?
I think a very simple definition of accident reconstruction is the application of physics and engineering science to collision events.
What role do you take as the director of accident reconstruction for ARCA as contracts come in or engagements come in?
Well, my scope in cases can vary greatly. As I just mentioned, I could have a case where I'm assessing the conspicuity of a pedestrian and a driver's response time. It could be a 50-car pileup on a highway and I'm trying to figure out a sequence of events. It could be a rear-end collision where a seat back has failed in the vehicle and the occupant has sustained injuries, and we want to have an understanding of the crush, the damage, the forces. So again, it can vary case to case.
Do you engage in reconstruction or attempt to engage in reconstruction of all sorts of passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles?
Yes.
What about motorcycles?
Yes.
Bicycles?
Yes.
Involving pedestrians and sometimes involving no pedestrians?
Yes, I see all types of collisions.
How many cases, if you have a number in mind, have you been a part of in terms of engaging in accident reconstruction broadly?
That's something that I don't track, but I've been with the company now for over 8 years. So at this point, if I had to estimate, it's well over 1,000 at this point.
What education, training, and background do you have that allows you to perform the duties that you've described for these jurors in terms of accident reconstruction and human factors analyses?
In terms of, are you looking at additional training?
Nope,
or
let's start with your education. I want
Absolutely, yep.
education, training, and background, but we can do them in order.
Okay, yeah, so we'll go back to 2012. I received a Bachelor of Science in Engineering from James Madison University, along with a minor in mathematics. Some of my courses included physics, statics, dynamics, thermodynamics, fluid mechanics, your engineering sciences. Subsequent to that, I then went on to pursue my PhD in electrical and computer engineering with a concentration in electromagnetics and photonics. So my coursework while doing my PhD included optoelectronics, semiconductor physics, basically how to guide light on semiconductor devices.
Did you write a dissertation to get your PhD?
Yes.
What was the subject matter broadly of the dissertation that you drafted?
So my dissertation focused on a technology called smart glass. So you may have seen this technology where if you've seen a pane of glass that is transparent, somebody flips a switch and it goes opaque. That's a type of smart glass technology. So my PhD involved developing a new type of novel, what we coined optofluidic smart glass. So we are using geometric structures that we've optically designed to create a very reflective surface or medium, if you will. And then through the introduction of various fluids, we can then modulate the amount of visible light and electromagnetic energy that is passing through or being reflected. So not just visible light, but also energy that you can't see. As part of that process, I ended up prototyping these structures with a 3D printer that was capable of printing 3D printable polymers. And as we kind of got towards the end of my work, we looked at how we could scale this up on a larger scale. And we ultimately ended up researching and doing tests with a material known as polymethyl methacrylate, which is PMMA or acrylic.
What relevance does PMMA play in terms of this case?
So with respect to this case, the outer lens and the clear plastic diffusers of the taillights on the Lexus are comprised entirely of polymethyl methacrylate, or that PMMA material.
The same material that was the subject of your dissertation?
Correct.
What additional training and experience do you have as it
boy.
relates to accident reconstruction beyond your BS and your PhD?
So certainly the 8 years of work that I've had at ARCA has certainly trained and taught me a lot over the last 8 years. Like I said, I've seen hundreds of collisions, all different types of accidents. But in addition to that, I've continued to take courses through Northwestern University in crash reconstruction, human factors and lighting, heavy vehicle forensics, heavy vehicle EDR downloads, Bosch data retrieval and black box downloads, photogrammetry, so a number of continuing education.
Are you accredited as a traffic accident reconstructionist?
Yes.
By whom?
An organization known as ACTAR.
Is that a nationally recognized organization?
Yes, sir.
What does that stand for, ACTAR?
The Accreditation Commission for Traffic Accident Reconstructionists.
Are you trained in photogrammetry?
Yes.
What is photogrammetry generally?
So photogrammetry is the science of extracting and measuring information in a photograph. So you don't actually have to physically inspect something to be able to get information about its measurements or where things are spatially. You can do that from a photograph alone.
Is that an accepted methodology in the field of accident reconstruction to use photographs and or videos without actually having been at the scene during the course of the crash?
Absolutely. It's very common.
You mentioned Bosch. What is the Bosch crash data retrieval analysis? What is that generally?
So generally, most modern vehicles on the roadway now have what's called an airbag control module, or more commonly known as a black box, which can contain crash-specific data in a collision.
Are you a member of any professional societies?
Yes.
Can you describe those for us, please?
So I'm a member of the Society of Automotive Engineers, the National Association for Professional Accident Reconstruction Specialists, the Illuminating Engineering Society, and the Optical Society of America.
Is it fair to say that you've authored a number of peer-reviewed papers in the field of physics and or accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Can you describe that for us?
So my most recent publication in the field of accident reconstruction deals with vehicle control history records. Publications prior to that were focused primarily on my dissertation PhD work. I
think you testified that you have dealt with probably over 1,000 different types of cases. Are you able to estimate of those 1,000 different types of cases dealing with accident reconstruction, how many of those or what percentage of those have involved pedestrians?
I don't know if I can give a percentage. I would certainly say it's the majority of my casework. As I mentioned earlier, given one of my specialties being in human factors and lighting, there's a direct correlation between time of day and pedestrian collisions. We certainly see a rise as sky illumination drops and the illumination levels go down. We're having to rely on artificial light sources. So given that occurrence happens in nighttime hours and low illumination, like I said, I certainly see many pedestrian accidents.
What types of pedestrian impacts have you been involved with in terms of your analysis or evaluations?
All different types, everything from pedestrians being run over, running into the side of vehicles, being hit by the front of a vehicle backing up in a parking lot into a pedestrian. So I've seen it from all sides of a vehicle. What
is kinematics? Can you describe that or explain that phrase or term?
I think a simple definition would just be the motion of an object or a body.
Have you done any testing as it relates to kinematics and the interaction between pedestrians and motor vehicles?
Yes.
How many times have you engaged in such an analysis?
Numerous times. We frequently and routinely do testing at ARCA.
You mentioned ARCA has several different disciplines within it. What are some of those different disciplines in addition to accident reconstruction?
So, as I mentioned, we have biomechanics and crashworthiness, and there's a few others. And I will note that it's very common in our casework that we will work together as a team. So to give you an example of that, I mentioned earlier about, that rear end collision, right? So let's just say we have a rear end crash and there's crush and there's damage to the rear of the vehicle and the seat back failed, which caused the driver to ramp up in the seat and ultimately hit their head on something and sustain an injury. So I myself, as a reconstructionist, will analyze the forces, the speeds, and the severity of the crash. The biomechanist will evaluate the mechanism for the injury based upon those crash forces. And the crashworthiness expert may analyze, okay, is there a better or stronger seat that may have held up in this crash?
Is it normal for you, as the director of accident reconstruction at ARCA, to work with others in the other disciplines that are housed under the umbrella of ARCA?
Absolutely, yes.
Is that a normal process for you?
Very common, yes.
As a matter of fact, it probably would be uncommon if you didn't do that, correct?
Depending on the kind of case, but yes, certainly wouldn't be uncommon.
Tell me about the testing that you've undertaken to determine forces that are at play in a given accident or an impact.
Okay. So to give you a simple example of it is, let's just say we have a sideswipe type collision where two vehicles sideswipe each other and a front bumper gets torn off or deflected essentially, and there's some deformation to it, right? We could do testing at ARCA to determine how much force does it take to bend that material so that we get the deformation that we have. That would be a good example.
Is there a specific type of testing, or is there varied types of testing that you've done and undertaken to determine the forces that would be, for instance, in your example, in that the forces at play in that sideswipe collision?
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been, again, as part of the test, we would be measuring the forces, we'd be measuring the displacement, we'd be able to calculate acceleration and things of that nature from that test data.
The tests that you undertake, are they generally accepted methodologies in the field of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
What are quasi-static tests?
So a quasi-static test would be like the example I just gave you, where we have basically the bumper would be stationary, right? And now we're pulling on it to determine how much force it takes to bend it. So that'd be an example of a quasi-static test.
So that test specifically is determining or attempting to determine the amount of force necessary to deform a bumper, for instance, in the way that it's seen after an impact.
Yes.
Or any other body panel, correct?
Correct.
And on the human side, also there are forces at play, I'm assuming, in terms of injuries that are sustained by pedestrians in the accident reconstructions that you've done involving pedestrians.
Yes.
Do you have experience in evaluating whether damage to a vehicle is consistent with a proposed scenario or set of facts?
Yes.
Describe those circumstances for us. What are the circumstances in which you're trying to determine whether or not the damage fits a proposed scenario?
So a case that commonly comes across my desk is we have two very different versions of how an accident unfolded according to party A and party B, right? And we have a set of evidence in terms of the damage to the vehicles, maybe some roadway evidence, right? So we can look at that objective evidence, utilize physics, maybe some calculations, to determine whose version is most consistent based upon the damage and roadway evidence.
Is that an accepted methodology in the field of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
In other cases in which you've undertaken such an engagement to determine whether or not the physics or the physical evidence matches a particular scenario or is inconsistent with that scenario, have you been able to ultimately reach conclusions and opinions to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty in those cases?
Yes.
Is that normally what you're seeking, to ultimately come to an opinion or a conclusion about those scenarios or circumstances?
Yes.
Are your opinions and conclusions based on your education, your training, the background and experience that you've explained to the jurors?
Yes.
Is it also in furtherance of the scientific methodologies that you employ in order to come to those opinions and conclusions?
Yes.
And are those generally accepted in the scientific and accident reconstruction community as a proper methodology to come to opinions and conclusions of that nature?
Yes, sir.
Have you been qualified in other courts to testify in the area of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Let's talk about how you began your work in this particular case. When you were initially retained in connection with this case, were you hired by the defense?
No.
Did you know who we were?
Sustained.
Your Honor, may we approach?
You can ask it differently, Mr. Jackson.
Sure.
Say that. Jeez.
Were you hired by anybody affiliated with the defense?
No.
At that time, did you know any of the names of the defense?
No.
At the time that you were hired to or engaged in this case, did you even know the name Karen Reed?
Sustained.
Did you know any of the names or of any of the parties?
Sustained. I'll see it.
Sure.
Man. Those are valid questions. I don't understand her sometimes. Are you
Sorry,
muted?
I'm on mute. What the heck?
I was like,
Who's this big guy? Did they just pick a guy that could take up 2 seats to look more crowded? Oh, Aaron's in today.
I don't know who half these people are that show up.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. Maybe I'll check Twitter because it seems like Aiden knows everybody. Oh, he's not tweeting. What the heck? Oh, let's zoom in on the family.
Is he there right now or no?
I don't think so. Oh my gosh, somebody said, rumor says Bev had to have a dehumidifier installed under her desk for today.
Oh my God, gross.
That's really gross, but fun.
That's really.
All right. Well, I don't know who that guy is, but let's try to catch up here a little bit. Rage crochet. Oh yeah.
When you were initially hired
Boys
to
in court
look at the
today.
facts and circumstances of this case,
Is-
did you do so independently? In other words, were you given a series of facts and a series of data and asked, just look at these facts and look at these data and make a few determinations about accident reconstruction in this case?
Yes.
What were you asked to do specifically?
It was to look at that evidence that we were provided and determine whether or not the damage to the vehicle was consistent with the injuries to Mr. John O'Keefe.
All right, camera guy, back to the main show here.
At the time that you were asked to engage in this independent analysis, were you provided information or data?
Yes.
Who at ARCA was assigned to the team that would ultimately engage in this particular analysis?
It was myself, Dr. Andrew Rentschler, and Scott Klein.
Describe what the materials were that you were provided in your initial assessment of this case.
Could I refer to my report?
With the court's permission.
If you mean Rentschler, yes, he is going to be there. I don't think today, because this will probably take all day, but we'll see.
Would you like me to just go in order from the materials reviewed?
That would be fine.
The Norfolk SPDU homicide death report, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of State Police crime scene report, OCME dispatch removal report, photographs of the incident location, videos of the incident location, photographs of the 2021 Lexus LX570, photographs of recovered evidence, crash data retrieval report from the 2021 Lexus LX570, report of autopsy photographs, and there was a few other items there, but those were generated internally.
There were about 14 things that were listed in terms of categories of information that you were provided, or ARCA was provided, is that right?
A little less than that, because some of those, like I said, were internally generated, but yes.
Why were you provided that data? What's the reason why it's important for you to get certain data as you begin your analysis?
Well, we wanted to have an understanding of, or ultimately the entity that retained us wanted to have an understanding of what, I guess, the evidence that we would need to reconstruct this.
I think
Did you get enough information to engage in a fulsome analysis, an accident reconstruction, in terms of the initial request by the entity that hired you?
Yes, in terms of our scope, yes, we had sufficient information.
Were you able to review photographs of not only the Lexus involved, but John O'Keefe's body?
Yes.
Is what?
Did you use those photographs in furtherance of your analysis?
Yes.
Did you use the reports detailing scenarios or possible scenarios in furtherance of your analysis?
From what I recall, I don't believe any of the reports indicated any type of theory or understanding of how the accident occurred.
Were you asked to determine whether or not certain scenarios could be possible?
I don't recall them giving us any scenarios to evaluate. They essentially left it in our hands. Here's the evidence. What do you think happened?
That was an open question, correct?
Correct.
All right. Did you engage in an analysis that basically allowed you to think of any scenario?
I think that's fair, yes.
In your initial analysis, did you note damage to the vehicle?
Yes.
Describe the damage. Let's start with the vehicle. Describe the damage that you noted in furtherance of your analysis.
The primary damage was to the right rear taillight on the quarter panel section. The majority of the outer red lens was broken and shattered, as well as some of the underlying components and diffusers that are underneath that outer layer, as well as some damage to the back portion of the taillight.
Can I stop you right there? Describe, when you say the outer lens material and some interior material as well was damaged, describe that in detail for us.
So the outer lens is red, and it's about 5 millimeters in thickness, and it basically encompasses the majority of that quarter panel taillight. And then there's a small segment that is clear, that is for the turn signal indicator, which is yellow. Underneath that 5 millimeter thick red lens, there are additional diffusers that run along the bottom. There's two rows of those, I believe, and then they also go up vertically on the side, and those are clear. And I think the thicknesses of those are about 3 millimeters.
Is 5 millimeters of PMMC, have I got that right? PMMA?
You'd call it acrylic. That's the more common name.
Easier for me. Is 5 millimeters of that acrylic, that outer lens material, is that considered thick or thin in terms of just sort of what we'd see on a taillight?
I would describe that as a pretty thick piece of plastic. It's certainly by no means, you can't, if you had a segment of it and you try to bend it, it's not going to bend.
In addition to that outer taillight material, that acrylic, in terms of the information that you received, did the interior acrylic also have damage to it?
Yes, those clear diffusers that, again, there's 2 rows of those, and they also went up vertically. Those were shattered and broken as well.
Was that important to you in your ultimate analysis?
Yes.
Did you note any superficial scratches or dents anywhere on the tailgate area or the liftgate area?
Yes, there was a dent and some paint chips, if you will, above the liftgate taillight assembly. So again, that next to that quarter panel taillight, there's another assembly that is on the liftgate, and there was a small dent and some paint chips at that area. There was also on the wraparound section of the bumper cover, as it's going from the rear to the right side, there were some superficial scrapes in that area.
Did you note any other damage or deformation to the Lexus? Deformation in the the liftgate, the bumper, anything like that?
No.
Is it common in a vehicle-pedestrian collision that there is some sort of bumper deformation that's associated with a vehicle-pedestrian incident?
That can certainly occur if a pedestrian is in an normal upright position. You can certainly get displacement of the bumper.
Did you see any displacement or panel deformation on the Lexus?
No.
Is it more common that there's panel displacement or deformation if the collision is above, say, 10 or 15 miles an hour?
Yes.
During your review of all the investigative materials, did you note any items of evidence that were recovered or claimed to have been recovered on the bumper itself?
I recall there were 2 or 3 apparent glass fragments.
What's the significance of that? Let me ask it differently. Is there any glass in the taillight assembly? May I ask that again?
Yes.
Is there any glass in the taillight assembly?
No.
Was there any shattered glass anywhere on the Lexus? Meaning panes of glass, the back window, quarter panel windows, anything like that?
No.
Did you have any understanding at that time of what the Commonwealth's theory of the case was when you began your initial analysis?
Sustained.
Did you have any indication of what the Massachusetts State Police theory of the case was based on the investigative reports that you had received?
Sustained.
Did you perform an accident reconstruction analysis to determine whether or not the damage to the Lexus, that taillight housing material, was consistent with an interaction with a pedestrian?
Yes.
Specifically, did you perform an accident reconstruction to determine whether the damage to the Lexus was consistent with an interaction with John O'Keefe based on the injuries that you were aware of?
Yes.
Did you evaluate whether the investigative theories regarding, let me ask it a different way. Did you consider the possibility of Mr. O'Keefe's head striking the taillight?
Yes.
Did you consider the possibility of Mr. O'Keefe's arm striking the taillight?
Yes.
Did you entertain the possibility that Mr. O'Keefe's center of mass, his body, struck the taillight?
Yes.
Before we get into the initial testing, were you able to come to opinions and conclusions concerning those things that I've just mentioned?
Yes.
Did you also entertain the possibility that a drinking glass could have damaged the taillight?
Yes.
Were these some of the things that you were sort of, it was left open to you to decide yourself?
Yes.
Did you later provide all of those opinions and conclusions in a report to the entity that hired you?
Yes.
Is it your understanding that those reports were then later supplied to both sides here in this case?
That was my understanding, yes.
Did you testify about those initial testing opinions and conclusions at a proceeding last year?
Yes.
Let's talk for a second about that initial testing that you conducted in connection with this case. When approximately did you begin your testing? And I'm going to phrase it as your initial testing, the testing that you testified to about last year. When did you start that initial testing?
From what I recall, it would have been late 2023 into early 2024.
I want to talk about the drinking glass first. Did you become aware that there was a drinking glass that was found at the scene?
Yes.
And what was the testing that you sought to determine as it relates to the drinking glass and the taillight?
So looking at the evidence, as I mentioned earlier, when we're looking at that quarter panel taillight, we have an isolated region of damage. And looking at the additional evidence in terms of a broken drinking glass at the scene, we wanted to do testing to determine if a small object or projectile such as the drinking glass could induce damage that was consistent with that we saw on the subject Lexus.
Were you able to reach an opinion and or conclusion as it relates to whether or not there is a possibility that the drinking glass or a drinking glass could cause the type of damage that you saw on the Lexus?
Yes.
Given everything else in your investigation, are you concluding that the glass was responsible for the taillight damage?
No.
However, you did seek to determine whether it was possible, correct?
Sustained.
I'll ask it a different way, Your Honor. What testing did you do, did you undertake in furtherance of that specific, answering that
Wait to
specific
talk
question?
about it.
Could the glass damage the taillight?
Right. So we designed a pressurized cannon that was capable of firing the drinking glass into the taillight at various speeds. We aimed for speeds of 30 and 40 miles an hour. Our achieved speeds were at 31 and 37 miles per hour. And we found that in the 37 mile an hour impact, and again, this is to emulate or simulate an individual throwing a drinking glass. The purpose of the cannon, if you will, was to be able to hone in on a speed precisely and obviously aim for that target. So it just served as a means of getting that projectile to the taillight in a means that we could measure it. And what we observed in the 37 mile an hour test is that we got damage that was generally consistent with that of the subject taillight, and that there was a large portion of the outer lens that was shattered and fractured, as well as the underlying clear plastic diffusers and chrome piece.
Tell me a little bit about the methodology that you undertook, the scientific methodology in building that pneumatic cannon and aiming that glass directly at the taillight.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, it was a customized cannon, if you will. It had a barrel that was capable of fitting a rocks or an old-fashioned drinking glass in it, and that's a glass that has a thinner sidewall, if you will. I think the glass was about 3 inches in height or so, maybe 3.5 inches, with the bottom portion being solid glass or just a thick piece of glass. So we were able to design a kind of a holder for it, if you will. Almost, you could really think of it as stuffing an actual cannon with a cannonball. So we literally would put the drinking glass in the cannon. There was a pressurized vessel behind that we would open up a valve rapidly, and when it was set to a certain pressure, that would determine the exit velocity that it would leave the barrel at. And we were able to aim that device into the taillight at those specified speeds to be able to determine what would the damage pattern be when we fired that glass.
Okay, so not only did he build a cannon, he built a science-y cannon that could, he could change the pressure of, and that's when he started the smile about it. You can tell he's proud of that cannon.
Well, it's kind of cool. Like, what a job.
It really is. It really is.
Were you able, in this scientific experiment, to control for aim and trajectory?
Yes.
Were you able to control for velocity or exit speed of the glass?
Yes.
Were you able to control for damage patterns as it pertained to both the glass as well as the taillight at which it was aimed?
I don't know that we have had control over that. Ultimately, physics takes over after that interaction occurs. I can't influence how that material is going to perform or how the glass will break, per se.
It's a poor question on my part. Were you able to, or did you undertake to memorialize the damage pattern that you saw on the taillight and the glass as the glass was projected into the taillight?
Yes.
All right. Did you do that through photographs?
Yes.
High-speed video?
Yes.
And all of that was memorialized in your report?
Correct.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Bring in the video, please, please.
No, I want videos of them doing all this
I'm
stuff.
handing you 2 photographs, or 2 8.5 by 11 documents that contain 2 photographs each. Can you take a look at those 2 documents and tell me if you recognize those?
Yes.
Does one represent, you mentioned that one of the tests that you performed was at 37 miles an hour, correct?
Correct.
Did you mention the speed at which, or the velocity at which the other test was done?
If I didn't, it was 31 miles per hour.
All right, so 31 and 37. Do you see those 2 documents in front of you?
Yes.
Does one of them represent the 31 mile an hour test and the photographs associated with that?
And an extracted frame from the high speed, yes.
Okay, and does the other one represent the other test, the 37 mile an hour test?
Yes.
If we could take those one at a time.
Do you guys think that he just shared peen pics with them? Is that your Canon? Totally
Not those
kidding,
pictures.
Source.
Oops. Yeah.
Whoops, wrong picture. That's an eggplant.
One more time. If I could ask that these be marked as next in order, one at a time, 31 mile an hour test, and handing to the
Oh,
order with the court's permission.
So there's no objection?
None, thank you.
Okay.
I think we're gonna see photos at least.
I'm sorry.
113?
If this is a PVC pipe, I'm gonna
Second
die.
document represents the 37 mile an hour test.
So the 214.
Well, like, weren't they under, they weren't allowed to bring out this stuff.
Exhibit.
Now they can, so.
What was that?
They probably had them. I said, he went on about how they didn't have any of this stuff last time. I said, probably because it was under that federal, like,
Right.
thing where they couldn't show any of their stuff that they had. So maybe now we're actually going to see all of it.
Yeah. I hope so.
Court's permission, I'd like to exhibit 213. I'm sorry, present exhibit 213.
Okay.
Is this the photograph that was just marked as exhibit 213 that's in front of you?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jurors what they're looking at?
So on the left part, you are looking at a frame from the high-speed video just after the contact with the taillight. On the right, you're looking at the post-damage to the taillight after the glass had been fired into it.
And if we could look at the next exhibit with the court's permission.
Okay.
And what are we looking at here?
Same thing on the left. Again, this is the 37 mile an hour test. The glass striking just in the area where the bottom of the turn signal indicator is. So right where it meets the red portion of the lens and the clear portion of the lens, that's about where the impact point was. You could see that a large portion of the outer red assembly, lens cover is missing and fractured. The clear portion of the part of the outer lens to the turn signal indicator is also fractured, as well as the underlying clear diffusers in that assembly.
Would your testing in both of these scenarios, the 31 mile an hour test and the 37 mile an hour test, represent an accepted methodology for controlling for aim, velocity, impact site, and those issues, if you will, as it relates to testing of this sort?
Yes, we were able to control those variables.
And is that an accepted methodology in the area or the field of accident reconstruction?
Absolutely, yes.
When you finished your testing, were you able to make a determination as to whether or not either one of these velocities, the 31 mile an hour velocity or the 37 mile an hour velocity, were consistent with the damage that you saw on the subject Lexus, which is the 2021 Lexus belonging to Ms. Reed?
Yes, from the 37 mile per hour test, we are getting damage that's generally consistent, and that I mentioned we have portions of the outer lens missing, the underlying diffuser. There was also some fracturing on the backside of the assembly. So again, we observed damage that was generally consistent with that of the subject taillight.
And that was the 31 or the 37?
The 37.
The 37. What about the 31?
Didn't have enough energy to create that damage.
So were you able to conclude, in your opinion, whether or not the velocity of that glass hitting the taillight would have to be somewhere in the vicinity of 37 miles an hour, well above 30 miles an hour?
Well above, and it certainly could have been above 40 miles per hour per se. I mean, we may have actually blown out more of the outer lens had the speed increased.
Did you have any information in the data or documents that you reviewed associated with this case, for instance, that John O'Keefe had a pneumatic cannon with him out there?
No.
Okay. So obviously, well, let me ask a different way. Based on this series of tests, were you concluding that the damage on the taillight conclusively was the product of a glass being hurled into the taillight?
Objection.
Sustained.
Were you concluding, or did you opine, that the damage to the taillight came from a drinking glass?
No, I gave an opinion that the damage was generally consistent with that in the test compared to the subject taillight.
But only in the circumstance where the glass is being hurled at 37 miles an hour, correct?
Sustained. Can I ask it differently?
Under
Mr.
what circumstance did you determine that it was consistent with a drinking glass?
If that drinking glass, again, the purpose of the test was to do a test to evaluate or simulating somebody throwing a drinking glass at the taillight. So that's what that test was to demonstrate.
Understood. Let's turn to another test that you undertook regarding the head injuries that you became aware of. Did you become aware of, in the data that you received, that Mr. O'Keefe had suffered head injuries to the back of his skull?
Yes.
What sort of testing did you do to determine whether or not and under what circumstances that head injury may be connected or associated with the damage to the taillight?
We performed a drop test with a hybrid 3. So that's an instrumented anthropomorphic test device to be able to measure the accelerations on a head form and observe the damage to an impact to the taillight.
What is an ATD, anthropomorphic test device?
So it's a device that's commonly used in our field, and it's certainly approved by the federal government to evaluate crash forces and occupant kinematics, or I should say occupant crash forces. So it's a device that reconstructionists and biomechanists typically use or commonly use to be able to evaluate, like I said, whether it's forces in a motor vehicle, or let's say you have something being dropped on somebody's head or an impact to somebody's body part, right? We can use that instrumented dummy to evaluate and measure the acceleration and the forces.
Another word or another phrase often used in association with ATD devices are crash test dummies, correct?
Correct, yes.
Why was it important to do a drop test?
So we wanted to have an understanding based upon the fact that Mr. John O'Keefe had a skull fracture to the back of his head, whether or not an impact, a direct impact between the taillight and the back of his head could have caused that skull fracture.
What did your testing indicate?
When we did the test, the impact to the taillight was at 15 miles per hour, and we observed that the damage to that taillight was significantly more than the subject taillight at the 15 mile an hour speed. Furthermore, it did not generate, according to my colleague, Dr. Rentschler, enough forces to cause a skull fracture.
So ultimately, what was your conclusion related to the taillight potentially striking John O'Keefe in the head at above 15 miles an hour?
From a damage perspective, it was inconsistent.
Inconsistent.
Correct, inconsistent.
Did you consider temperature and control for temperature in any of your testing?
Yes.
Why is that important?
Well, that will affect how that, we've talked a lot about that acrylic material of the lens. That will certainly affect how it fractures. So we absolutely controlled the temperature during these tests.
How did you control for temperature?
So we had them sit overnight in chest freezers to get them to the desired temperature, which for our original set of testing was at 28 degrees Fahrenheit. We then rapidly moved them to our test fixture, and then they were fired almost immediately after that.
And when you're talking about them, you're talking about exemplar taillights.
Correct, yes.
Are those exact replica taillights that you would find on the 2021 Lexus SUV?
Dang,
Yes.
they froze them.
After your testimony in the first proceeding last year in the spring of 2024,
Amazing.
were you ultimately contacted by the defense in this case?
Yes.
When were you
Better get ahead
contacted
of
by the
all the
defense?
stuff Hank's gonna run at him about.
I know that I had
Yep.
reached out to you, I believe it was in February of this year, because I think I saw some things in the media and was just wondering what was going on.
Sustained. Just when? Just a date, Dr. Will?
I don't know if I can
Shut
give a
up, Bev.
specific date. If I had to estimate, sometime in February or March, probably.
Were you still under contract with the other entity that hired you?
Sustained.
Why?
At some point, you and I spoke, correct?
Correct.
And that was, you believe it was February of 2025?
Yes.
Had we spoken at all between the end of your testimony at the proceeding last year and February of 2025?
No, that was the first time.
Did I ask you anything about retaining you?
Not at that time, no.
At some point, subsequent to that initial discussion in February of 2025, did we have another discussion about the potential of retaining you?
Yes.
Tell me about that. When was that?
From what I recall, it was sometime in March, and we were trying to figure out.
Sustained. Next question, please.
Did I ask you if you were available to be retained by the defense?
Sustained.
May we approach?
Okay.
Yeah, because I guess I feel like Hanky wants to keep all this stuff
Yeah,
under wraps, so
Hank's
you can
gonna
just
totally.
bombard him with it. Yeah.
He's gonna ask these questions, so then he should be. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what's being objected to. Is it like the form of the question, or is it the content? All right.
That's my confusion too. And that's why I hate that they can't state just the grounds at least. Exactly, Julie. He wants to be the one to spin it.
I know that. I feel like that's his objection. Like, give me a reason, then, hanky spanky. Yo, if they put half the money they spent on a Lexus into like a modern air conditioner, they would all be full right now.
I know. But like, look what they did. They did it different. They bought a bunch of the taillights and did other.
Mm-hmm.
May I inquire?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Wolf. So ultimately in March of 2025, were you hired by the defense?
Yes.
Okay. Were you asked to do anything or to review anything from the Commonwealth and any of their experts in relation to testing that was undertaken by them regarding the Lexus and Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
What were you asked to do?
My understanding is that we were asked to review and evaluate the report and analysis conducted by Dr. Welcher.
Did you receive Dr. Welcher's reports?
Yes.
Did you receive his raw data?
Yes.
Did you receive his 140 plus page PowerPoint?
Yes.
And did you undertake a review of that, all of that data in?
See, I disagree. It can totally have AC if they did it the right way. What we have a lot of older places in outside of Philadelphia of yes, exactly. Mini splits. You don't have to put a hole in the wall. You don't have to do anything. You literally just put this small little quiet thing on the wall and put that in there.
Yeah, a lot of
And-
older places do those things. So
Yes. So you don't have to put in ducts and anything. Yeah, the White House is air conditioned. Like, yeah. And I mean, and if you can't do it, then that's the dumbest thing ever. And then they should rethink a lot of things. I mean, they already should, but yeah, they work awesome. We put one in my mom's attic because it's really hot up there, and they converted the attic so it's like usable space, and it's like got barely any insulation, but now it's amazing with the mini split. Yeah, it's a lot less than a Lexus to put them in, and that's not a big room to cool. Just a lot of bodies, and maybe some moisture today.
In order to evaluate that data?
Yes.
What methodology did you undertake at that juncture before you began any testing? Just your review process. What methodology did you undertake in terms of your review of his evaluations and his opinions and conclusions?
Well, I think when reviewing his report and his analysis, I look to his opinions, and then I look to what's the basis and the foundation to those opinions, right? How did he ultimately arrive at those final conclusions? So I'm looking for the methodologies that he followed, what testing did he do, what type of experiments, what type of data analysis, ultimately to provide that opinion.
Ultimately, did you prepare a PowerPoint presentation in furtherance of memorializing your review and opinions and conclusions of his evaluation and testing?
Yes.
Did you bring that with you today?
Yes.
Do you have that with you on your computer, or are we going to run the PowerPoint?
It's on this computer up here with me.
With the court's permission, could Dr. Wolf present his PowerPoint presentation?
Okay.
Oh, imagine that. Yeah,
Your Honor, I
permission.
have a thumb drive that I believe represents the PowerPoint. Do we have this marked?
Yes, is this coming into evidence?
I'm agreeing it's demonstrably made by evidence.
All right, so we'll mark it for
We
identification.
can mark it for identification for the time being and discuss it later. Thank you, Your Honor.
Should it BBB for identification?
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Dr. Wolf, do you see what's displayed or presented up on the TV screen?
Yes.
All right. Do you have with you, by the way, just a matter of housekeeping, something called a spotlight?
Yes.
Something that can do whatever spotlight that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
I may ask you to employ that, or I may take it from you at some point as we're discussing this. Do you recognize what's on the screen?
Yes.
What is this?
This is my PowerPoint with just the first page, the title.
If we could move to the next slide, please. Describe what we're looking at in this slide.
This is from Dr. Welcher's PowerPoint presentation, slide 121, in which he's indicating that there are lacerations on John O'Keefe's right arm and forearm. And he's indicating in this slide that the location and orientation of the lacerations on John O'Keefe's right forearm and arm are consistent with the geometry and orientation of the right rear taillight of the Reed 2021 Lexus LX 570.
In coming to your opinions and conclusions, and I know this is a mouthful, did you consider the opinions and conclusions of Dr. Welcher in conducting your analysis and your ultimate testing?
Yes.
Did you rely on Dr. Welcher's report and his PowerPoint in reaching your conclusions and opinions ultimately in this case?
I don't know that I relied on it. Certainly, I utilized them to have an understanding of what his basis was for his opinion and what his opinion was. Ultimately, ARCA, we did our own independent testing to evaluate that.
So just to be clear, I'm not asking Dr. Wolf if you agreed with his opinions and conclusions. I'm simply asking, did you rely on those in order to come to your opinions and conclusions? Did you incorporate them?
Sustained is to.
Did you agree ultimately with Dr. Welcher's opinions and conclusions?
Sustained.
You certainly were aware of what his opinions and conclusions were, correct?
The form, Mr. Jackson, on that one.
Were you aware of Dr. Welcher's opinions and conclusions?
Yes.
Are some of those opinions and conclusions represented in your PowerPoint?
Yes.
Are some of them represented on this slide in your PowerPoint?
Yes.
You indicated that this slide indicates that the location and orientation of the lacerations on John O'Keefe's right forearm and arms are consistent with the geometry and orientation of the right rear tail light, correct?
Correct.
Are the injuries to John O'Keefe's arm lacerations?
That would be an opinion from my colleague, Dr. Rentra.
Have you ever heard the phrase abrasion?
Yes.
In your opinion, are the injuries to John O'Keefe's right arm better described as lacerations or abrasions?
I don't have an opinion on that.
Okay. Slide number 2, please. Based on your review of Dr. Welcher's reports and his data, what testing did Dr. Welcher undertake or conduct?
So he did, initially it appeared that he did a static test, if you will, just demonstrating holding his right arm out adjacent to the rear taillights on the right side of an exemplar Lexus to demonstrate his theory of how the arm contacted the taillight.
What is a static test?
So I'm sustaining that. Ask it differently, Mr. Jackson. And I'm going to strike that.
What testing did you note that Dr. Welcher did with regard to this particular photograph? What is a static test?
Well, in a static test, that neither the arm or the vehicle is moving. It's just he's aligning his right arm adjacent to show how his arm aligns to the geometry and the dimensions of the Lexus.
Did Dr. Welcher appear to be wearing similar clothing as John O'Keefe was wearing on January 29, 2022?
Yes.
Welcher preferred to be a
Is there any significance or purpose for that, in your opinion?
In this test, no.
Did you identify any limitations with regard to this sort of testing undertaken by Dr. Welcher?
Well, it's very basic in that the only thing that this demonstrates is that you can get your right arm to align with the taillight. Beyond that, it doesn't tell you anything with respect to what happens to the arm when it makes contact with the taillight, right? What's the motion of the arm? What's the damage to the taillight? What's the acceleration of the arm? What's the forces of the arm? So it doesn't answer any of those other questions. The only question it answers is, does the arm align with the taillight?
Thank
You're
you.
aware that John O'Keefe was 6'1", correct?
Correct.
Yes, and they also didn't. I mean, I think somebody had brought it up, maybe here, or maybe I read it on X or whatever it's called now. That when there's a different curb height when it's in motion too. So there's that.
But think
And how
about
much
it.
snow? How
Yeah,
much
like-
snow was under it?
He'd have to be just standing there perfectly with his arm and holding his glass and not moving to get exactly what they want. That's what he was doing. What
Right.
kind of test is that? You don't.
Yeah. Well, he was just sitting there staring at his shoes, and then they blew off.
Hey, if I had tilt my arm like this and stand just still right in this one spot, then it's perfectly gonna work out.
But it's important to note what T-shirt he was wearing.
Yeah,
Stupid.
it is so stupid.
And I bet you they charged the Commonwealth for that T-shirt too.
They did the clothes.
Could you imagine seeing that
clothes,
line
the
item on an
card.
invoice? Orange T-shirt.
Yep. orange t-shirt, sweatshirt.
Is the only person, let me ask it a different way. Can only a 6'1" person align their arm with the taillight?
No, the arm is adjustable, so certainly people of different heights could also meet that alignment as well.
Just by
Right.
pivoting your arm a little bit, right?
Sustain.
How would you describe the ability of somebody 5'7" or 6'3" being able to align their arm with the taillight?
Just changing the orientation and the posture of your arm.
Was there any scientific significance, in your opinion, of this particular test?
Again, other than just demonstrating that it aligns with it, no, nothing beyond that.
Next slide, please.
I think Alan Jackson's trying not to laugh.
What are we looking at here?
So this is an extracted frame from one of his dynamic tests in which the vehicle is moving at about 2 miles per hour into his arm, making contact with his hand, his forearm, and his elbow.
What is a dynamic test as it relates to a static test?
So that's when something's in motion, and in this instance, it's the Lexus moving at about 2 miles per hour into his arm.
Did Dr. Welcher explain what the purpose of this test was?
From what I recall, I think it was to demonstrate that when his arm makes contact with the taillight, he observed paint transfer in the general location that there were the abrasions or the lacerations on his arm.
Did he appear to paint the taillight?
He did, yes.
Do you see that Dr. Welcher appears to be wearing an orange t-shirt?
Yeah.
Sustain.
What is he wearing?
Appears to be an orange t-shirt.
Is that similar to what was described as John O'Keefe having worn that night on January 29th, 2022?
Yes.
Is there any significance to wearing that t-shirt?
Not that I can think of, no.
Did you note any or identify any shortcomings with this particular test?
Well, much like the static test, again, it leaves the door open to all those questions, right? About, again, doing this at 2 miles an hour doesn't tell you anything about, well, what happens at 10? What happens at 15? What happens at 20, right? In terms of what are the collision forces? What's the damage? How does the arm move? What would the expected injuries be, right? This dynamic test, as well as the static test, doesn't answer any of those questions for us.
Is this test from Dr. Welcher considered a force calculation?
I'm not aware of him making any type of force calculations or measuring accelerations or anything of that nature, no.
Did Dr. Welcher conduct any testing to determine whether the damage to Miss Reed's Lexus was consistent with the striking of an arm of a pedestrian?
I'm not aware of any impact testing that he did, no.
Did Dr. Welcher conduct any testing to determine the forces necessary to cause the damage to the taillight of Miss Reed's vehicle?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Did Dr. Welcher conduct any testing to determine the forces necessary to cause the injuries to John O'Keefe's arm?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Did Dr. Welcher provide any opinions as it relates to the speed of the subject Lexus at the time of the alleged incident?
No, from reviewing his report and his PowerPoint and analysis, I could not find anywhere in it a specified speed or even a range of speeds.
Did Dr. Welcher provide any opinion as it relates to the forces experienced by the taillight in such an impact?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Did Dr. Welcher provide any opinion at all as it relates to the post-impact trajectory or movement, if you will, of John O'Keefe's mass or his body subsequent to the alleged conduct?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Next slide, please. Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes.
What is this?
So this is something that you probably have heard and certainly I've discussed already, but this is looking at the right rear corner of the subject Lexus, specifically in the area of the damaged right taillight.
Did you consider this photograph in coming to your opinions and conclusions?
Yes.
What, if anything, of significance did you note about this taillight other than the fact that it's damaged?
Well, I'm going to jump to the next slide, if you will. So this is now the taillight obviously has been removed from the vehicle. So obviously what's important here is looking at what is the damage that we have to this taillight? What components were damaged in this alleged interaction? So we're looking at the clear diffuser at the bottom is fractured and missing. Same with the ones on the vertical side. The majority of the outer red lens is also missing and fractured. And then on the back side, we also have some damage in terms of some fracturing to that black plastic, and there's also a chunk of plastic missing on the top portion of the taillight as well.
I want to ask you a couple of questions about that diffuser. If you could focus your attention on this area. Describe for the jurors what they're looking at in terms of the diffuser. What is the diffuser?
Right, let me see if this. So the diffusers, right where my mouse is, there's a clear diffuser that runs along the bottom, and then there's another diffuser that runs along here, and then it also goes up vertically. Same here on the bottom one, that also goes up vertically. So this piece was missing and fractured on the bottom, along with the vertical portion. The chrome piece here you can see is also fractured and damaged, and then the kind of the second tier, if you will, that clear diffuser was also fractured and broken on the upper section as well.
Was that of significance to you in your review of the damage to the taillight?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because that tells me that we have to have enough force and energy to break, we talked about earlier that 5mm thick red outer lens. We have to have enough force to be able to get beyond that to now start penetrating into the interior components of the taillight to get to, again, those clear diffusers and certainly cause damage to get induced out the back end of the taillight as well.
May I have just a moment more?
Yes.
Dr. Wolf, did you bring with you an undamaged taillight exemplar?
Yes. It's up here with me.
It's up there. Oh, I was just looking
Nice.
for it.
Yep.
Thanks for nothing. Describe what it is that you brought with you.
So I brought a two-part assembly. So what I did is I 3D printed a bracket so that I could mount the lift gate taillight assembly as well as the quarter panel taillight assembly.
And these are undamaged in sort of manufacturing specs, correct?
Correct, yes.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Okay.
I know.
Up there at the witness stand.
Yes.
Could you retrieve that with the court's permission?
Okay.
Oh, look at Bevy. I didn't ban Brandon.
If you could remain standing for just a quick
He was
second.
here earlier.
Do you recognize what that is?
Yes.
Is that what you just described?
Correct, yes.
Describe it one more time for the court and the jury. What is it that we're looking at right here?
So this is an exemplar set of taillights from a 2021 Lexus LX570. On my left side here, this is the lift gate taillight assembly, and it's attached to the quarter panel taillight assembly. And I will note it's not normally like that. Obviously, you can't have a connector, else you wouldn't be able to open the lift gate, but I've printed a bracket back here so that these can remain as one unit.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to have that marked as next in order.
Is that coming into evidence?
Yes, if possible.
Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay. So how,
May I approach?
yes.
Did he object?
No, he said no.
Thank you. You just have the tag perhaps put somewhere on the maybe the lift gate side.
And is Dr. Wolf going to use it for his testimony now?
He is.
Okay,
Very
so
briefly.
give it back over there, please, Chrissy. Just give it to him. Thank you.
Is it 250?
Thank you. If I may, Doctor.
Yes.
I think he said no objection. I was just,
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
When he said may we approach, I was like,
there was a 5 mm area of acrylic covering the diffusers, correct?
Correct.
What I'm knocking on, is that the 5 mm acrylic?
Yes, both on the quarter panel part that you just pointed to, as well as the liftgate part.
Mr.
Those are-
Jackson, why don't we give that back to the witness and let him do it instead of you?
Sure. Is there, can you see through that loose material into the diffuser that you've just been describing?
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, in this area here, there's a diffuser that's running along the bottom.
So, Dr. Wolf, I'm going to ask you to not have that so close to
Oh,
court reporters.
My apologies.
Use the other side of the witness stand.
Yes, Your
please.
Honor. So along the bottom is the clear diffuser that runs along and then goes up vertically. And then on the second tier, there's also a clear diffuser that runs along here and then goes up vertically. And you might be able to see it through, it kind of looks like there's little dots on it. So that's what I'm referring to in terms of the diffuser that's underneath. And that, again, so you have that outer material that's 5 mm roughly in thickness. And then those diffusers are about 3 mm in thickness underneath this.
Could you make a determination, and you can go ahead and have a seat. Well, actually, you may not want to. Could you make a determination of the space, the gap between the outer plasticine area, the outer acrylic area, and the internal diffusers? If you could just estimate that gap.
If I had to estimate, I'd probably estimate around an inch, maybe inch and a half.
Okay. You indicated that something was of significance to you in this photograph about the diffusers on the subject taillight, correct?
Correct.
Describe, now that you're holding that, what was it that was of note to you, Dr. Wolf?
So as I mentioned, we have damage not only to this outer thick portion, but it was enough force and energy to then penetrate deep enough to fracture the underlying diffusers that sit below this outer surface, and certainly enough force then to work its way back through inducement into the backside, and ultimately there was a top portion of the taillight that was also fractured up here.
Was all that significant to you in your review of the subject taillight material?
Yes.
Okay, you can go ahead and put that away.
All right, so that can't go back there because it's in evidence. So why don't you take it and... Mr.
I was
McDermott.
just going to store it there until he's finished with his testimony, and then we can give it to the clerk magistrate.
Okay.
However you want to do it, Your Honor.
All right.
I have
Do you
no
wanna take
preference.
it? Is he using it still for his testimony?
Not right now.
All right, so, thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay,
that thing can't be cheap.
May I continue?
yes.
Can we go to the next slide?
No, it's girthy.
What are we looking at here?
Well, it's girthy. Is that what you said? Well,
The first one I thought of.
I do think it's good that the jury will actually get to hold it and look at it and see how thick that is. They aren't that
Well,
expensive? All right. Well,
I mean, seeing it like that, like, and I don't know, like maybe they get to see it and stuff, like, and be like, it's probably like going to be a lot harder to break than you think. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I kind of wish it was like opened up so they could see the diffuser, like that test online that I saw by that one guy, like that sealed the deal for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like what it looks like when that tail light or that diffuser is broken versus not broken.
This is a collection of photographs that depict various fragments from the right rear tail lamp assembly of the Lexus. And I will note that, and I'll try to spotlight it, there are a few fragments in this photograph that are glass fragments, which, as I discussed earlier, there's no glass in the taillight, so these did not originate from the assembly. But altogether, from what I recall, there's about 50 fragments, I believe, that were counted or so, maybe a little less than that from the right taillight.
If we could go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So these are photographs depicting the sweatshirt or hoodie that Mr. John O'Keefe was wearing on the night of the alleged incident.
And what was the role that this played in your analysis ultimately?
Well, so one of the things that I noted, and I can go to the next slide, is there were a series of small punctures or holes in the sleeve, on the right sleeve of the sweatshirt in varying sizes. I think some as small as just a few millimeters. Again, I think there was maybe 10 or 12, I think I recall, on the right sleeve of that sweatshirt.
If we could go back to the larger previous slide, do you see the right sleeve denoted on the photograph to the right?
Yes.
Your review of these photographs, what was the significance of the triangular sort of arrows or markers?
I believe those were to annotate or draw attention to those holes.
Okay, the defects in the right sleeve?
Correct.
Can you count those for us, please?
On the photograph on the right, I believe I see a total of 9.
And what about the photograph on the left, just the right sleeve area?
9 as well.
If we can go to the next slide. What are the arrows pointing to in these photographs?
So this is basically the previous shot, but what appears to be close-ups of some of those evidence markers.
You indicated some of the sizes. What were some of the smaller sizes of those defects of holes?
From what I recall, like I said, I think it was around 3 to 5 millimeters, maybe some of the smaller ones.
How big is 3 millimeters in inches?
It'd be probably around like an eighth of an inch or so.
Can we go to the next slide, please? What are you describing when you say the word fundamental, or do you write the word fundamentals?
So I want to discuss some very basic concepts that I hope will kind of resonate as we go through the PowerPoint so that you have an understanding of the underlying physics and what I'm talking about.
Can you go ahead and describe the role of an accident reconstructionist and the fundamentals that an accident reconstructionist undertakes when performing the kind of testing that you performed? So,
as I mentioned earlier, when I was describing what a simple definition of accident reconstruction is, it's the application of physics and engineering to collision events. So I want to go through some very basic elements of that so that you have an understanding of the physics.
Can we go to the next slide, please? What are we looking at here?
So this might be something you all remember back from high school physics, but even though it's been around since the late 1600s, we still use these laws today. So what we're looking at here is what I've done is just describe Newton's laws very simply. So, and again, you might be familiar with these. So, for instance, if we're talking about Newton's first law, an object at rest tends to stay at rest and at a constant speed unless it's acted on by an outside force, right? So if my arm is just here, right, it's just going to stay there until I give it a push or a pull, right? When I do that, that's going to induce an acceleration, right? So that's when we get into Newton's law, where if I apply a force to a mass, I'm going to cause it to change its speed. It's going to accelerate. And then Newton's third law, basically the law of reaction, indicates that when I push on my arm, there's also an equal and opposite force going back to my hand that I'm pushing with.
What role did these three very fundamental laws of physics play in your reconstruction or your ultimate opinions and conclusions following your accident reconstruction in this case?
So when we're talking about the concept of acceleration, what you will see in the dynamic test that we did and conducted, we measured the acceleration of an arm when it's impacted by a taillight. If we know the mass of the arm and we've measured the acceleration, we can use Newton's second law, which is force is equal to mass times the acceleration, to calculate what that force is applied on the arm, which ultimately you will hear from my colleague, Dr. Rentschler, to talk about that.
Is that broadly considered a force analysis?
Yes.
What role did your force analysis play in the accident reconstruction that you did or you undertook in this case?
Well, there's certainly going to be a correlation between the impact speed and the damage that we see. The higher the impact speed, the greater the force. So from my perspective, I was interested in the speed and the force to look at what's the observed damage to the test taillights that we did.
Do you think that's fundamental to an accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Did Dr. Welcher engage in any force analysis with regard to John O'Keefe's arm and the taillight?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Let's move to the next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So don't be too afraid. This is some really simple equations that I want to show you. So that first one, delta V. So what do I mean by that? That simply just means you can think of delta, change in. So change in velocity. So if you look at that equation, the change in velocity, really simple. If I've got an object that's, let's say it's initially, for what V naught is, initially at 0 miles per hour, I hit it, and it's now moving 10 miles per hour. That means it underwent a change in speed of 10 miles an hour and is moving at that velocity. Acceleration is essentially how quickly did that velocity change occur, right? Did it go from 10 miles an hour in a split second, or did it go to 10 miles an hour over a few seconds? So depending on the timing of how quickly that change in velocity occurred will determine what the acceleration is. And as I've already mentioned on the previous slide with Newton's second law, we can then take that information about acceleration.
I have no idea what is going on right now. And I took physics. So, yeah. I'm with
Leslie's
you.
over there probably getting so excited.
Oh, yeah. Well, Alessi and AJ probably have, they're like, oh, this is old hat.
Yeah.
And apply it to, if we have a known mass, to calculate what the force on that object is.
How did these math equations, delta V, acceleration, force, how did these play into, what role did they play in terms of the accident reconstruction here in this case?
Well, they're extremely fundamental. And I think as we go through the PowerPoint, you will have an appreciation and understanding of what these concepts are. You'll see that I have plotted graphs with acceleration that shows the rate in that change in speed over time. You will see graphs of delta V, so the change in speed of the arm as it's being impacted by the taillight. And then ultimately we can calculate the force of that impact to be able to assess whether or not there's a mechanism for the injuries. And as I mentioned, that'll be my colleague, Dr. Rentschler, that will discuss that.
Can I ask you about delta V specifically? I'd like to focus on that for a second. Is that okay?
Delta
Yes.
V.
When you say that that equation suggests or dictates that an object that is struck by another object with mass moves up to the same speed of the object that struck it, describe that in a little bit more detail in colloquial terms, if you will. Sixth grade terms.
I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question?
Probably not, because I don't understand it as well as you. If an object, does delta V describe the circumstance in which you have an object that may be at rest and it's struck by another object moving? Is that calculating the speed at which the object that is struck moves to the same speed as the object that struck it?
Objection.
So that's sustained. Just ask him a simple question, let him answer.
Easier said than done, Your Honor. Sure. Can you describe in more conversational terms what delta V is describing in terms of mathematics?
Right. So let's just give an example specific to this case. If the majority of the arm is struck by a 6,000-pound vehicle moving, let's say at 20 miles an hour, that arm will experience a change in speed. It'll go from 0 up to about 20 miles per hour due to that impact. So that would be the change in speed. If my arm is at rest, stationary, is impacted by a 6,000-pound vehicle, it's going to change its speed up to roughly what that impact speed is.
And what about acceleration? What are you describing, or what is math or physics describing in that equation in terms of the time it takes for that arm to now move from 0 to 20?
Right, so that's how quickly that change in speed is occurring. So to give you maybe an example you're more familiar with, let's say you're driving down the road, you come up, you see a red light at the intersection, right? You're going to get on the brakes lightly, and your vehicle is going to change in speed, right? It's going to slowly decelerate. Let's say you're driving and a deer jumps out in front of you, you got to slam on the brakes, right? You're going to change your speed much quicker. So that's an example of two different rates of acceleration. One where you're mildly braking, right? You're going to coast down slowly, versus a sudden, emergency in front of you like a deer, you're going to slam on the brakes and your speed change is going to be it's going to happen much quicker with that acceleration rate.
Are there circumstances in which the acceleration can be from 0 to, say, 20 miles an hour in milliseconds?
Yes, when we're talking about impact durations, especially of this nature, yes, they're not going to be, we're not talking about the impact occurring over a second, 2 seconds. That's extremely long. Even a duration of a couple hundred milliseconds in the context of this is considered long.
And then, of course, the force calculation is associated with the delta V and the acceleration calculations. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
In what way? What are we looking at in terms of that a little bit more complex calculation?
Absolutely. So if you look at the bottom equation there, where I have force is equal to mass, and then that top component is the change in speed, right? That delta V, V1 minus V naught, divided by the change in time, T1 minus T naught. So if you substitute in that equation, right, that's delta V over delta T, which is acceleration. So there's a relationship between all of these equations.
And do all of these equations, or did all of these equations assist you in coming to determinations and opinions and conclusions concerning this case?
Yes.
Are these normally accepted methodologies in determining delta V, acceleration, force, all the force dynamics or impact dynamics in an accident reconstruction?
Absolutely. They are the core of physics.
Can we go to the next slide, please? What are we looking at here? Scientific method. What does that mean?
So the scientific method is a process that scientists typically use to be able to reach conclusions. And so you can think about it in this case, we make an observation, right? We have injuries to the arm. We've got a damaged taillight. So let's try to do some research to figure out, okay, has anyone done testing with that, right? Has anyone hit an arm with the taillight, see what happens, see what the forces are, right? And then we start to make a hypothesis, right? So what happens, it's kind of an if-then statement. If the arm contacts the taillight, does the taillight break? Does it not break, right? What's the hypothesis there? And at least my understanding of reviewing Dr. Welcher's work, it appeared to be that his hypothesis...
Sustained. Next question.
Sure. Did you review, well, let me ask a different question. Going back to the calculations previously, the delta V, the acceleration, the force calculations that you described to the jury, did you see anywhere in any of Dr. Welcher's reports or his data that he undertook those core calculations?
No.
With regard to the scientific method, did you see whether or not Dr. Welcher followed this scientific method as you're explaining it to the jury?
Sustained.
What did you note, or what opinions or conclusions did you come to about the scientific method, if any, that Dr. Welcher did or did not undertake?
Sustained.
Did you review Dr. Welcher's entire database? In other words, all the reports, all the raw data, and his PowerPoint?
Yes.
Did he undertake the scientific method as you know it?
Right, so that's sustained.
Continue to describe the scientific method as you know it and you employ it.
Certainly. So again, from reviewing Dr. Welcher's report, he indicated...
Sustained. I want to see you at sidebar.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah, like,
I don't like what his answer might be.
oh yeah, like, God, I hate these stupid objections. Like,
Yeah. Stupid. Okay.
gives Zoom room.
Dr. Wolf, may I inquire, Your Honor?
Yes.
Dr. Wolf, where are we on the chart? I've lost my place.
I think hypothesis.
Okay. Let's describe, if you would, please, what role hypothesis plays in the general scientific method.
So generally, it's like I said, it's an if-then statement. So if you make a statement, if the arm contacts the taillight, then the taillight will shatter, right? So you want to do tests and experimentation and analyze that data to see whether you can accept or reject that hypothesis.
And what's the next stage?
So as I mentioned, after hypothesis, it's once you've determined that, what your hypothesis is, you want to test with experimentation, analyze that data, and that certainly may be an iterative process that you do multiple times to then be able to draw a conclusion from that analysis and testing.
What's the next stage?
To basically report those conclusions and findings.
Why is it important to report those conclusions and findings?
Well, I think so that you can, whether you can accept or reject the hypothesis that was put forward earlier.
Do you have to analyze the data following the testing that you undertake?
Yes, like I mentioned, I think it's an iterative process, because certainly you could do one test and it may not be clear what the answer is at that point, so you may have to do additional tests to basically parametrically evaluate your hypothesis.
Did you see this well, let me ask you first, did you undertake this scientific method with regard to your reconstruction or your testing in this case?
Yes.
Did you observe this same scenario in Dr. Welcher's report?
Sustained as to that point, Mr. Jackson.
Did you see this undertaken anywhere else?
Sustained there.
Did you look for testing in Dr. Welcher's evaluation, all of his data?
Yes.
Did you find any,
No.
other than the static blue paint test?
That was the only test, correct.
Did you see any force dynamics testing?
That's leading, so you can
Sure.
get to it without that.
What about any other testing? Anything else that we've talked about? Do you see anything else done in Dr. Welcher's
As it
report?
pertains to an analysis to the taillight and the damage and the forces, no.
Let's move on to the next slide. Did you actually undertake testing in furtherance of the scientific method?
Yes.
Let's move on to the next slide and you can describe what we're talking about. What are we looking at here?
So you're looking at a test matrix of the various tests that we conducted at ARCA. I could go through them one by one if you want.
Let me ask you foundationally, was your testing directed toward determining whether or not the scenario proposed in Dr. Welcher's report was consistent or inconsistent with what you would find ultimately?
The objection sustained.
Was your testing specifically designed to determine whether the damage to Ms. Reed's vehicle, her Lexus, was consistent with the scenario that was proposed by Dr. Welcher?
Yes.
That's sustained too. Ask it differently, Mr. Jackson.
What was your testing? What were you engaged in terms of your testing? What were you trying to find out?
Well, I think it was to, again, we talked about earlier about that hypothesis, right? My understanding, Dr. Welcher indicated that the arm contacted the taillight, but there was no analysis or testing to determine what's the expected outcome of that. What's the damage to the taillight?
So you answered the first question. I'm striking that second part. Ask another
Oh my
question.
God.
Was there anything else?
Jesus.
I think simply put, it's to find out what happens when you impact an arm with a Lexus taillight at various speeds. What happens?
What was your understanding of Dr. Welcher's hypothesis?
That's sustained.
Did you have an understanding of Dr. Welcher's hypothesis?
That's sustained too.
Ultimately, what were you trying to find out through your testing?
As I mentioned, I think it was to determine when you impact a taillight at 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour, what happens to the taillight? What's the expected damage? What happens to a sweatshirt when it makes contact with that? What happens to the fragments? How does the arm move? What's the acceleration of the arm? What's the change in speed of the arm? And certainly, as I mentioned, my colleague, Dr. Rentschler, will discuss what are the expected injuries in that type of impact.
Did you see any of those questions answered in Dr. Welcher's report?
Yeah.
Ask it differently.
What did you see in terms of Dr. Welcher's report as it relates to those types of questions?
That's sustained.
Ultimately, did you undertake a methodology to perform the testing to answer the questions that you just explained needed to be answered for this jury?
Yes.
Describe that, please.
So we started out, we kind of worked at this incrementally, right? We didn't start right off the bat with utilizing an exemplar Lexus going right into an ATD or a test dummy, right? We wanted to start in the laboratory to have an understanding what happens at a range of speeds, in this instance, in our first two tests, between 10 and 17 miles per hour, right? What happens, what kind of damage do we observe, right? At 10 miles an hour, do we even break the light? At 17, what kind of damage do we get? What kind of accelerations do we get? And then we moved up to full-scale vehicle impact testing.
Is that methodology that you just described generally accepted in the field of accident reconstruction, in the broader field of engineering?
Absolutely. Everything from utilizing an instrumented test dummy to using an exemplar vehicle to all the data acquisition systems that we had in the laboratory as well as the vehicle. All of that is generally accepted techniques in the field of accident reconstruction to evaluate what we did in this case.
And are those techniques also supported by peer-reviewed articles in scientific literature related to accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Did you rely on this methodology that you just described to render opinions and conclusions as it relates to this case?
Yes.
Have you relied on that same methodology in rendering opinions and conclusions in other courts?
Yes.
Let's go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So based on all of that, do we think that Dr. Welcher is really going to come back and try to refute that? Because I don't. I think he's going to get, I don't know. I mean, maybe he'll spew some sciencey stuff that sounds good, but.
Well, if he's going to go back and do the testing that he thinks is going to work for him, like, good luck.
Yeah, but I used blue paint.
Yeah, because now he's going to have to break a taillight, kind of do the kind of stuff they were doing, things like that. And he's not going to get the results he wants, I guarantee it. Because he said it in his direct anyway. He said, oh, if I did all that stuff, you guys would have a field day, you know?
Yeah, we would.
Yeah, because it's not consistent. It's not going to be consistent at all.
Yes, he's allowed to watch this. Yeah, the objections are starting to get to me. I don't think it's, I think that I actually have no idea why he's objecting and why he's winning. Some of it is leading, and AJ is leading quite a bit, but I think maybe more foundation. I have no idea. I don't know. I think Bev is just like, yeah, sure, probably something. So she sustains. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't tell.
So we've gone over this before, but this is looking at the exemplar vehicle that we utilize for the latter part of our testing. You're looking at again, just annotating where the liftgate taillight is, as well as the quarter panel taillight.
When you say exemplar vehicle, what is this SUV that we're looking at?
So it's the same year, make, and model of the subject vehicle. So it's a 2021 Lexus LX 570. So it's the same weight, same geometry, same as the subject vehicle.
Is this a picture off the internet, or do you actually have access to this truck?
We have access to that vehicle, yes.
And ultimately, what testing did you undertake specifically as it relates to this particular vehicle?
We did full-scale vehicle testing with the vehicle driving into an ATD arm, as well as an ATD arm attached to a dummy, and then a full-on impact to a test dummy.
Experts are under the sequestration for like the expert that they're trying to rebut. And he tried to be a crash test dummy, but found out he's just a dummy. Yeah, so you did real tests. Yeah, without blue paint and dressing up in cosplay.
Did you assess the damage to the right tail light after these various tests?
Yes, after all of the tests.
Did you assess the acceleration and quantify the forces that were involved?
Yes.
Did you assess the material and textile damage to the clothed ATD?
Yes.
Ultimately, did you conduct lab tests in an effort to answer some of these questions as well?
Yes.
And you've already mentioned this, but you utilized in your testing the exemplar vehicle to the fullest extent that you felt necessary?
Absolutely,
Were
yes.
you hampered or hindered in any way in terms of damaging the vehicle or utilizing the vehicle in any way that you wished?
No.
Let's go to the next slide, please. What are tests A and B? What are those laboratory tests?
So these were the initial two tests that we did to get an idea of starting to test this hypothesis. As I mentioned, we weren't sure at 10 miles an hour what would happen to the taillight. We wanted to see what would happen at 17 miles an hour with the arm. So again, it was to evaluate from a starting point what happens in this interaction based upon how Dr. Welcher had his arm oriented in his PowerPoint and analysis.
Next slide, please. What is this?
So you're looking at a photograph of our lab setup. You can see on the left side of that is our Hybrid 3 anthropomorphic test device. To the right is a linear impactor, and this is something we already have in-house that we built years ago for our testing that we do for the National Hockey League, when we're looking at, what's the accelerations on an impact to a goalie wearing a helmet, right? We use this same device for that type of testing to measure head acceleration. So we applied this same linear impactor to be able to project, if you will, or accelerate the taillight at a known speed into the ATD arm.
What are some of the instrumentation that you use in addition to the mechanical impactor? What's some of the instrumentation you use to track the data?
Certainly. So you could see, I'll get my, see around here. So at the top here, there's a blue camera here. There's another blue camera here. So these are our high-speed cameras. And you'll see there's a bunch of lights around those high speeds. That's just because the frame rate's so high. And again, it's only sampling a very, very short amount of time. So you have to have a lot of light when you do these high-speed tests. So we have the high-speed cameras running. We have an accelerometer mounted to the ATD arm here on the other side. So that's some of the instrumentation. There's also a couple other cameras that we're documenting this overall.
Can we move to the next slide, please? What are we looking at in these photographs?
So this is looking at, and not to be confused, this wasn't the arm position when the impact occurred. This is just showing you the setup. So on the left is just kind of an overall shot, and then on the right is, right here is a uniaxial accelerometer. So that's going to measure, we talked about that term earlier, right? The acceleration. So that's going to
Look at how steady he is when using the laser pointer. This is like a dumb thing that I'm just noticing, but like everybody else was like, seemed nervous. This guy is like cool as a cucumber to the point where he could do like brain surgery with his steadiness.
Well, he's so confident in his, like, what he's doing.
And
it's such a crazy difference.
It's not really a dig at the other experts because, I mean, I don't know, I shake all the time because I'm not a brain surgeon, but it's just, I don't know, something I noticed.
Measure how quickly is this arm changing its speed, right? What's the acceleration of the arm as it's impacted?
Does that accelerometer put into motion some of the mathematical formulations that you talked about earlier?
Yes.
Let's move to the next slide, please. Tell me about these photographs.
So the importance of this is more specifically looking at the right photograph here. Might be a little bit hard to see, but we wanted to get the same exact sweatshirt or hoodie for the testing to evaluate if the taillight breaks, is there a mechanism for the fragments to penetrate and cause holes in the sweatshirt as were observed in Mr. John O'Keefe's sweatshirt?
Next slide.
Oh, so
Were you
did something that
successful
made sense.
in finding the exact replica sweatshirt?
Yes, and I will note, as I mentioned, I know it probably is hard to see, but the material blend on the sleeves are the exact same. They are 60% cotton and 40% polyester.
Was it important in your mind to maintain consistency with the data that you had received concerning John O'Keefe's clothing?
Certainly, I think we wanted to try to control as many variables as we could.
Let's move to the next slide, please. Test A. Describe Test A for us, please.
So you're going to see a series of photographs and then videos, but Test A was mounting a preconditioned taillight on that linear impactor to accelerate it into the Hybrid 3 arm to, again, evaluate the damage to the taillight and the acceleration to the arm.
Let's move to the next slide, please. What are we looking at in these photographs?
So you're looking on the left, a photograph just before the impact test was conducted. On the right, you're looking at a thermal image that is depicting the temperature profile of the taillight.
Describe that thermal image.
Normal.
Certainly. Your Honor, may I refer to my notes?
Yes.
This is like the first time he's had to look at his notes. Maybe second.
So what I did is I analyzed the profile of the temperature down in this area. And when we look at that segment, that lower portion here, where contact was made, the average temperature in that area was about 34 degrees with a minimum of about 33 degrees.
How did you get that exemplar taillight down to around freezing?
So all of the taillights that we tested were preconditioned overnight in a freezer.
Why was that important?
Well, it's my understanding that at the time that this allegedly occurred, the ambient temperature was 31 degrees Fahrenheit. So as I mentioned earlier, certainly there's a correlation between how plastics perform in cold weather. So we wanted to take that variable into account in our testing to precondition them down to temperatures that were consistent with at the time of the alleged incident.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this slide, on this photograph?
So this is a video. Do you want me to go ahead and play the video?
Tell us what we're about to see, and then I'll ask the court's permission.
So you were looking at a camera that is mounted above the entire setup. If you look at the top portion of this video, you will see the taillight. Part of it's covered by the high-speed camera. But what will happen is the linear impactor will fire, and the taillight will be accelerated up to 10 miles per hour, striking the clothed ATD arm.
With the court's permission,
Okay.
let's go ahead and play the video. Next slide, please. What is this?
So this is also a video, but with the high-speed camera. So it's a high-speed camera that's looking top down at the arm. So you will see when the video plays, you will see the taillight enter from the left and contact the arm. And I will note that this is essentially slow mode, so it's not happening in real time.
Sorry.
Oh my God. It's
So you'll see the
cool.
taillight slowly moving, but it's actually in reality moving at 10 miles per hour.
Understood. Go ahead and play that.
Oof.
What did you say?
Can I ask a question now that that's played?
Holy
How did you mount the taillight to the accelerator, that linear accelerator?
What did you say?
I said, I was just, I wasn't looking at the screen. It said 10 miles an hour. I was going to ask you what speed that was, but I see it's 10.
Oh,
And I said, that's only 10. And look at how much.
yeah. That was an
force is
ouchie.
going into that. And it didn't even break. It didn't break, did it? No.
It didn't break. And
Oh.
T-Rex, thank you so much for your super chat. Sir, did you slather yourself in blue paint and do the Macarena or throw the dummy on the ground without any real reason? Also, did you buy yourself a Lexus on Karen Reed's dime? Actually, I think he used the U.S. taxpayers' dime, but probably did more with it than smear blue paint on it. So it was probably worth it. But no, I don't think that they used Karen Reed's. I mean, she already has one technically, but the Commonwealth destroyed it and tore it all apart. And she may never get it back. Yeah, I think the feds probably bought it.
Yeah.
Wait, did you say, is it broken?
I don't know.
It might be like it kind of looks like, oh, sorry. Like right here. Why isn't this working for me? Okay, there it is. Right in here, if you guys can see my mouse, that kind of looks like what happens when like your screen gets cracked on your cell phone. So maybe, but there's definitely no pieces missing. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know. This stuff is so cool to me. Oh, I wish I went in a different.
Yeah, same.
Sometimes.
Right. So we had to get a little bit creative there because you may have observed this when we had the physical assembly out earlier. The back of that, it's not some nice clean surface that we can just bolt on. So what we had to do is 3D print a bracket that we could bolt onto the linear impactor, and we used a polyurethane expanding foam to be able to marry those two together so that we could then bolt it onto the linear impactor to use it for this test.
Did you see any debris from that foam mounting mechanism?
Yes, there's a few flakes you can see of that polyurethane foam off the backside kind of going into being dispersed there.
Okay. With regard to this particular 10-mile-an-hour test, what did you note in terms of the damage to the taillight?
It was very minimal.
And what did you note in terms of any damage at all to the hoodie?
There was none.
Can we go to the next slide, please? What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is looking at a side view. So same test, just looking at it from the side. And similarly, you'll see the taillight come from the left and impact the arm.
If we could play this, please.
No, I don't want to look. Ugh.
What did you note in terms of deflection of the arm, the test arm?
Well, the arm essentially, and we'll see this in the data later, it reaches a common velocity with the taillight. Based upon the portion of the arm that was contacted, again, consistent with how Dr. Welcher has it oriented, it will become accelerated up to 10 miles an hour roughly.
Over approximately what period of time is that arm accelerated up to 10 miles an hour along with the taillight?
So that's not plastic pieces. He was saying that that's the stuff coming off the back of here that they use to attach it to this like arm. So that's what these pieces are floating. It's actually not tail light. It's just essentially styrofoam.
Yeah.
And that would be a broken arm. I agree too. Like I'm looking at that. I'm like, ouchies.
At least bruising. If not broken, lots of bruises.
Yeah.
See it on the data plots. I think it's about 10 milliseconds or so.
How long, do you know how long an eye blink on average takes?
Off the top of my head, no, I don't. Probably pretty quick.
Somewhere around 250 milliseconds? Does that sound right?
Sustained.
Let's move to the next slide, please. What are we looking at in this series of photographs?
So these are extracted frames from the high-speed video that we just saw on the previous slide, basically showing just at contact, just after contact, and then post-contact, so you can see the kinematics of the arm and how the arm is moving.
Okay. Let's move to the next slide, please. What is this photograph?
So this is photographs taken of the taillight after the 10-mile-an-hour test. I will note that there was a couple small fragments of the clear portion of the assembly, the outer lens that was missing from that turn signal area towards the left here. There was
Okay,
a
so
couple
maybe there
fragments
is some.
missing, and then there was some small fracturing here in that area.
How would you describe the damage to the taillight at the 10-mile-an-hour test?
If I may go to the next slide, I think it might.
Sure.
So this was the totality of that damage at 10 miles per hour. So I would describe it as minimal and superficial.
Okay. Next slide, please. What is this?
So this is the photograph that I just shown you compared to that of the subject taillight, so that you can have a side-by-side comparison of the test taillight compared to that of the subject.
Were you able to reach any opinions and conclusions about whether the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 10 miles an hour?
It's inconsistent, in my opinion.
Next slide, please. This is still test A, is that correct?
Correct.
Were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether or not the damage to Mr. O'Keefe's clothing is consistent with being struck by the taillight at 10 miles per hour?
What I observed from the test is that there was no mechanism to create any of the holes that we observed on the subject sweatshirt.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty,
Yes.
as well as the former opinion that you just gave us?
Yes.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this graph?
So this is a graph that shows the roughly, on the next graph, you're going to see a 24 millisecond window. So what I want to show you on this graph is what does that look like over a full second, so you can have an appreciation of just how quickly this is occurring. As you mentioned earlier, I think your comment about a blink of an eye, this is even shorter than that. We're looking at, as you'll see on the next graph, again, it spans over just a few milliseconds. So that yellow tick that you see in the middle there, what I've done is I've plotted that over a full second. So 1 second is equal to 1,000 milliseconds. So if we go 500 milliseconds to the right, 500 milliseconds to the left, this whole graph represents 1 second in time. This impact duration is occurring very quickly.
1 second, is that reflected from the beginning of the graph to the end of the graph? That's representative of 1 second, is that right?
Correct. So starting at this y-axis all the way to here is 1 second in time, with our impact duration happening over just a few milliseconds.
And this was at 10 miles an hour?
Yes.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this graph?
So we're looking at the acceleration or the change in speed over time, that parameter that we discussed earlier. So what you can see is that as the arm is impacted, we had the accelerometer mounted on the inside portion of the forearm, if you will. You see that it starts to accelerate, right? Because it's changing its speed, and then it starts to level off after the impact has subsided, basically, and it's reached a common velocity.
What do we see in terms of the G-forces that the arm is subject to?
So the peak is occurring right around here at about, looks like just over 6 milliseconds. And the peak acceleration is just over 130 Gs.
And what does that mean? What is a G?
So a G is acceleration due to gravity. So if we're being held down by 1 G, so you could think of it as basically a multiplication factor, that it's 131 times the acceleration due to gravity.
And the next slide, please. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is, again, that concept that we talked about earlier, delta V. This is the change in speed. So if we do some math to the previous data that we collected, it's a technique called integration, but we can actually add up all of that acceleration to determine what speed did the arm get up to. And when we do that calculation to this data, what we see is that initially at the impact, right, the arm's at rest, right, Newton's law, first law. And then we impart a force on it in terms of the tail light impacting it. It's going to cause the arm to accelerate and change its speed. So as I noted earlier, it's essentially going to reach a common velocity with the impact force based upon how Dr. Welcher has the arm oriented. And we can see that it's a tick over 10 miles per hour at just over 10 milliseconds. So that means that the arm in a 10 millisecond period is going from 0 up to about 10 miles per hour, which was the speed of the impact.
And 131 times the force of gravity is exerted on the arm at the same time?
Sustained is to that form.
Where does gravity play into this? What is the 131 Gs? Where's that force exerted?
So that is the acceleration that the arm experienced as a result of that impact. So that's how quickly it was changing in speed.
Understood. Let's go to the next slide.
So is this a good place to take the morning recess? All right, folks, we'll take a recess. Dr. Wolf, you can file our jurors. I want to see counsel regarding just scheduling, please.
All rise for the court, please.
Well, alrighty then. Wonder how long this puppy is. Oh, Aiden is in that court today. Well, I know, so I want to go to the next slide too. Well, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the videos. I think they showed a lot, and that's only 10 miles per hour. I would not want to be hit at 10 miles per hour even, to be honest. All right, they're coming back.
All right, 20 minutes.
Court, all rise.
And we're live. All right. So did people actually kind of follow along with that? I know I did. It was, I think that the videos kind of told a good story. I know I did. I like this kind of stuff, like all that. I mean, the boring numbers and whatever. Usually I kind of tune out and do something else, but I was actually following along. I understood. I think he has a really good way of explaining things.
I thought that was so much better than last year.
Yes. Yes,
Because
very much.
you get to actually see what it looks like. And they did their testing and they're saying, yeah, nah, we're just cracking the taillight. It is not blowing that taillight out.
Right. Yes, 100% better than Welcher. Like, I can't wait to see. I mean, I can wait to see Hanky in his dumbness, but I can't wait to see, like, Dr. Wolf just sitting there. Whatever, dude. Can't faze me. You're
I mean,
a piece of
I'll put
crap.
$100 on it. All he's going to do is go after the text messages and the signal, and
Yeah.
you were colluding with the defense. It's going to be nothing about his actual testing.
But it doesn't, like, but show where anything that would have been said would change anything.
Yeah.
Like,
Show me
that's
that.
the thing, like, he's showing everything. He has video.
Yeah. This is why they wanted to keep him out so badly. We can see why. He probably saw all
Yeah.
this and was like, oh my God, my case is over.
And they're not denying that they worked with them this time to prepare.
No.
Thank you, Lefty. I think it's going to do this
Lefty.
guy. Oh, gosh. Oh, my.
They don't hate anyone. They love everybody. I wish
my
they
dogs.
wouldn't though, because what if like a robber comes in? They're just going to be licking their faces too.
I know. That's kind of what I say about my lab. Like his bark sounds scary, but he's like a big love bug. But at least
Yeah.
like he sounds scary. I don't know. He'd probably show the robber where like all the money's hidden. If I had any. He'd dig the hole for him in the backyard where he put it.
Yeah.
Aw, thank you. Yeah, I wish I had the most boring physics teacher in college that I don't even know how I got through it. I think I just memorized things and then it was instantly gone once I took the test.
Oh yeah, I had like the oldest, most boring, like Ben Stein like voice teachers. Like, because I like science. I always liked science, but man, oh man, it was tough to listen to those people.
Mm-hmm. My history teacher in high school was like that, and I was like, I will never like history because of you. And if that's true,
Oh, yeah.
like I'm like,
Same.
stop talking about history. I don't care. If you tell me about the future, I'd be listening.
I am just so excited for this.
I
Like,
know.
this is so much better. I love seeing the little experiments and stuff like that.
Yes,
When
I
they're
do
legit,
too.
not when you put blue paint on yourself and stand in one position. That was dumb.
Yeah, and they used the same hoodie this time, but oh, excuse me, but they didn't even like they actually used it for a reason, not just to, you know, get the jury's feelings,
Yeah, they used it because
which
they
probably
want to see
wasn't
the
effective.
damage that would occur. And like we've all said from the beginning, it's insane to think that a taillight did all that.
If Hank uses Dr. Wolf's wager against him, then that's just the saddest, most pathetic example of stupidity I've ever seen.
Oh, Squab Bob. He uses Swager against him. Oh,
I mean, how could he use it against him?
do you think that he might bring up some stupid stuff like, didn't his wife join the free care and read after the first trial thing that everybody is putting out? I
Yeah.
wonder if that'll.
Did you watch Dateline?
Yeah, I guarantee it. It's like it doesn't matter. He's showing you what he did. Like it's not him watching a Dateline episode is not going to change his opinion of his testing. And also all that stuff, his testing was done way before
Right.
the trial even happened.
I agree. I am just looking to see if there's anything. Like, I kind of want to know what the, like, Batterow and all of them are thinking. Oh, here we go. Brother Counsel says, Hank Brennan's first question on cross. You mean to tell me, Dr. Wolf, that you did not use any blue paint at all in your reconstruction, and you want this jury to believe you're qualified? Dude, even Brother Counsel is like, what the heck?
I know, I'm so curious to see what everybody's thinking. Yeah, blue paint. Oh man. That was so stupid. Like, ugh. And how is he really gonna come in and completely discredit this guy? I mean, I'm not just being biased. I think he legitimately is
Well,
really,
remember,
really good at what he does. So regardless of what case he's talking about, I guarantee he's going to do good work no matter where he goes. This guy is like, they are really good at what they do.
but also remember, Bev said she was going to give him the wide cross on this because of his late whatever, and she probably actually will give what is a wide whatever, unlike what she did for Alessi.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's gonna go after all of those things. He's gonna go after the money and the contacting them and how many times did you talk to them and what did you talk to them about? Yeah, like it's nonsense.
So John DePetro says, more Monday quarterbacking from someone who'd not even examined the SUV. He is Marie Russell in a tie. Well, he wasn't trying to replicate it.
Who cares? Like, what is okay? These anti people, I do not understand why any of them think just because you didn't look at the actual car that you cannot determine what happened. This is what a majority of these people do on a daily basis. They don't go to the crime or I say crime scene, but I mean like crash scene when it happens, right when it happens. I'm sure that's very far and few between.
Yeah. Aiden says the jury is taking a lot of notes. Never seen them take notes like they are today. Most of their faces he can't see because they're vigorously writing. This testimony is completely destroying the $400K Aperture investment and taxpayer money that Hank Brennan used to try to lynch Karen Reed. Ugh.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, like even looking at the car, they still have to do the test. They still have to take a taillight that's replicated, the same thing and try to replicate it. And that's what they did. So just because they didn't look at the car, that to me shows that somebody has an agenda. Because if you cannot if you can't step back from that stupid opinion that you keep holding and really look at it for what it is, it tells me that you don't even care. You have an agenda. You're over here saying she's guilty just because. So
yeah,
that opinion is nothing to me.
And
because even me on the side of not guilty can look at things that happen and go, wow, that's weird. But
yeah. And they're also commenting about how Alan Jackson is wearing his wedding ring and flashing around after the last few days of Karen and Alan having dinner together.
Oh my God, shut up.
Yeah. Stupid.
It's insane how crazy they are.
Can you imagine being like Arca and seeing the blue paint and just laughing your ass off over days? I would just bring that back up and laugh.
Yeah, I'd be like, what is this? I mean, they pretty much said that in one of the things that I remember one hearing. So it was like, they don't get his report is it's stupid, basically, you wanted to say.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I would be going to other people's offices, look at this, and tell me, give me your first thoughts. It'd be like, what is this trying to prove?
Yeah. I mean, just the little bit that they did right there with showing the taillight going into the arm, that's I mean, case over.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, what else to say.
Yeah,
I'm just so, I cannot even imagine what Brennan is going to try and do to save this for himself.
Right.
Other than try to be just weaselly like he normally does.
Yeah. I don't know.
But I don't think it's going to work because we saw Wolf get hammered on that voir dire and he didn't even bat an eye.
Yeah, he doesn't. I don't know. I think that even if they did have any merit to it, his like demeanor is everything. And I think sitting up there and being a defensive prick like Welcher was, it didn't do him any favors.
100%. Yeah, like he was rock solid.
Right. I
Yeah,
also like
did you
to try to fit like 4 million sentences on one slide.
I know. Yeah. But Dr. Wolf, did you hear that she said I hit him? Yeah. And
And
I mean, who cares? It's the same with I hit him and he didn't inspect the car. Okay. Did you go look at the debris field? They always do that too. I'm like, that doesn't matter. Because first of all, it doesn't matter because nobody properly photographed it as it was. It was just, it's all taken out of context. You
right.
can't look at that debris field or any of those pictures and tell anything from it. It's stupid. I
Aiden
would like
also
him to bring that up though, that if the taillight busted, like how it would explode out like that. But anyways, beside the
well, I
point.
think we're Welcher.
Yeah,
He couldn't.
I know.
That's the problem. Aiden also said Paul O'Keefe has been looking at the floor for most of this testimony. He has no interest in hearing the science that proves the people he has befriended murdered his brother. He just looked up to see the slide about 3 of Newton's laws of physics and seems very confused by them. Strong caveman vibes.
Oh my God, it's just funny. Well, I mean, yeah, they did the first time, and I guarantee they're doing it the second time. It's like they already have their minds made up, and it's sad.
Yeah. I wonder if like Brennan will bring up something like, did you know that people call you Crash Daddy?
Yeah. You know, you have a following on the internet, and people are done. Yeah, like, ugh.
Did you feel intimidated by Aiden Kearney? Because he can't say it right.
By a internet blogger.
Yeah. What about the blogger?
Blogger, he's a menace.
Yes, we
JoJo.
are on break.
She's leaving for Mackinac Island. I'm so jealous. I've lived here my whole life, and I've never been to Mackinac Island.
Really?
Yeah, I've been
No, I haven't
up to
either.
Mackinac all the time, but I've just never went to the island.
So we are supposed to be on break for 23 or 20 minutes, and we've been on break for 25. So at least another 20 minutes.
Ugh.
Do I have access? No, I don't. I mean, I might in like my mod thing, but maybe Brandon hid you. Yeah. Lesko was here earlier. I don't know what happened to him. I'm really kind of curious. Like we're going up to 17 miles per hour next. I want to see what happens at like that 24.
No, and just wait until.
Where did you get that number? Who told you that?
He keeps saying that. Like, it's so crazy. Did he not say that? Has that not been brought up? Every time he says that, I think to myself, is he insane? Because I could have swore that was the whole testimony he was talking about.
Well, I don't know if he specifically said it, but it came from the last trial. I think Trooper Paul said
for sure it came from the last trial, yeah. And that was a big running thing the whole time when me and Baker first started watching it. It was like she backed up at 24 point. I think it was 26 at first, and then it went down to 24. But still, I just remember us thinking, what a crazy speed to back up at, and how did somebody do that, especially in the snow,
well,
on like a curved road? Because, ugh.
because there's an automatic braking thing at a certain speed. I don't remember what it was. Actually, my automatic braking was triggered last night, backing up, going like probably less than 10, probably 5 miles per hour for a bush.
For a
Yeah. Like I knew I was close to it, but I knew it was a bush. So I was like, I'm not really worried about it. So, but then my car automatically braked. Yeah, 26 was the speed. So they had to pick something below that. I'm surprised they didn't say 25. I guess 24
Yeah.
sounded more like they didn't make it up.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, it was just crazy because that was the speed, and then the whole first trial was that speed. And now, well, now that I think about it, you're right. Maybe Brennan was very vague about the speed up to 24 miles or something like that. But I thought that that triggering event had a speed on it. That was the whole thing.
I don't,
Am I wrong?
I think it was just brake.
Or just
The-
pedal, like the
Yeah, the
percentage of
pedal,
the pedal being pushed
friction,
down or something. Okay.
which she said was 75%. And let me tell you something about that because have you ever like gotten mad at somebody who like passed you or like beeped at you or something?
Yes,
You
all the
don't
time.
push it like 75%. You floor it. Like, if she was really mad, that thing would have been all the way to the floor.
Yeah. Like
Not 75%. I don't think Karen half-asses things.
it's yeah, and then I
Oh my
I
God.
wonder, yeah, I bet the Plevin people over there are just like, nah, these people don't know. They're probably doing the same thing. Well, they didn't have all the information. What about the DNA? They didn't look at the car. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, they
All
have
the
more
same thing.
stuff that was easier to follow than your dumb experts that were douches.
Oh yeah, and those testing. I'm just so excited about those testing videos.
I know.
I like seeing that stuff.
Unfortunately, there's some broken yellow taillight in my yellow snow this morning. Oh my God. I bet Plevin is like over there, like, this is so boring. Nobody's following this.
Nobody's following this. He's not as good as Dr. Walter. I can't do a Plevin voice like Baker.
Me either.
I don't know what that was.
Too funny. I'm kind of jazzed to see the rest of this. I wish there was a potato cannon
I know.
video,
See it.
but I
Yeah,
think
just
we're past it.
well then once we get past this, then Dr. Rentschler, is that his name? Rentschler? Yeah. He's going to talk about the injuries, and that's going to be interesting too, because it's going to blow that out of the water and be like, this is what will happen to your arm. It's hit like
Well,
this.
they have their own La Posada or whatever,
Yes.
their ME.
She's going to say that he did not die of hypothermia. It's like the biggest thing I thought.
Right. And then Brennan's going to be like, well, did you see the real body?
Yeah.
It's like, no, but the person that did said he didn't die from a car accident.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yes. Love a good meatloaf. I bet you Plevin's mom's meatloaf is disgusting. I'm just saying. Kind of in a catty petty way, but
Yeah.
I don't really I do like meatloaf, but sometimes it's like the meatloaf that kind of lingers with you for the rest of the night. That's not my jam. Like if it has too much onion or celery in it, and then you just like, ugh.
Yeah, like I'm very particular. My mom does it a certain way, and I don't like anybody else's.
Pretty sure everybody likes their mom's meatloaf, except for me. I don't like my mom's meatloaf, but she usually overcooks it. What, if any, blue paint did ARCA guys use? Zero. I don't even think
Which
they
is
use blue
great.
tape.
No. They actually
blue
did
string.
real testing, Baker.
Yeah.
Slamming a taillight into an arm. Imagine that.
I'm just so happy that we got the video. Yeah, they've got to clear up this Jeep thing. More for me than the jury. I don't think the jury gets it, but
Yeah, we know too much, so we know that Jeep was there, and there ain't no way she would have slammed right into it.
we are getting some closed captions from court, so we're probably coming back soon.
Well, how, if any, did they dress up like John?
Technically, the
Only
crash
for the
test
purpose
dummy.
of seeing the sweatshirt didn't, contain the damage that they experienced. That was good. The dummy dressed up like that. But it was a different color shirt.
Yeah. Oh, they used the wrong color Lexus too. I agree, but the interior of the other Lexus was wrong as well. So.
Court is back in session. You may be seated.
No.
Okay, you all set, Dr. Wolf?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Wolf, before we get into laboratory test B, I failed to ask you, were you compensated or was ARCA paid following the proceeding last year for any of the time?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, last year. Yes.
Last year?
Correct, yes.
Do you know how much that was?
From what I recall, I think it was around $20,000.
Was ARCA paid by the defense your initial testing, the initial analysis which talked about earlier this morning? Was ARCA paid by the defense for any of that?
No, not the report, testing, none of that.
Okay. What were you paid for last year related to the first proceeding?
My time to appear at the proceeding.
Travel?
Correct, travel, testimony. Yes, sir.
So the form, Mr. Jackson.
Sure. What about now? Have you been paid any additional sums by the defense specifically for your undertaking that you're testifying about today?
Yes.
About how much have you been paid?
I think when I spoke to accounting, I think they indicated it was around $50,000.
Okay. Let's talk about laboratory test B, as in Bravo.
Only 50?
What did he
If I may
say?
have just a moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
Is it around 50?
What was different about lab test B?
What did he say it
But
was?
they've only, he said about 20,000 for the first time or whatever, but this time around 50. But think of it, like most of their testing report was done previously, so they only had to do a little bit this time around. So
Yeah, and maybe not all of it was billed yet,
yeah.
which Hanky will probably bring up. Like, is it done billing?
Yeah, right.
Baker
Get a
is
man cold in the Americas.
yes.
No man fever.
Baker gets sick all the time.
Such.
All right. Wait, I wonder how much the car was. Oh, but the Commonwealth or the feds probably paid for that.
Yeah. They probably.
If I may have just a moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
What was different about lab test B as opposed to lab test A?
So the tests were essentially identical aside from the speed increase going from 10 up to 17.
Okay. Let's take a look at the next slide. Just so I'm clear, Doctor, I want to make sure I'm on the same slide as you. Is this slide 35 pursuant to your notes?
This is slide 36.
36, got it. Okay. We could be a little bit more brief, I think, because is this similar to the 10-mile-an-hour test, just with increased velocity?
Correct.
Okay. What about the purple hued taillight on the right? What is that?
So again, that is a thermal image depicting the temperature profile of the right taillight that was tested.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to note that the average temperature profile of the taillight here in this test was approximately 30 degrees Fahrenheit.
Is that below freezing?
It is, yes.
And the ATD, the test dummy, if you will,
Yes.
is it also clothed?
Correct, yes. You may notice a difference in the sweatshirt color. We put on a new sweatshirt in this test.
Oh,
Was it
imagine
also
that.
an exact replica of the sweatshirt at issue worn by John O'Keefe? I'll ask it a different way. How did it compare to the sweatshirt that was worn by John O'Keefe?
It was made by the same company and had the same material blend as the previous test and the one that Mr. John O'Keefe was wearing.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
So this will be a video. You will see, much like you did in the other one, where the taillight will be accelerated up to 17 miles an hour, impact the arm. And one of the things you'll see is actually an artifact of the test, if you will, where the taillight, due to the fact that the impactor stops at the end of the stroke, that force actually causes it to decouple from that polyurethane foam that we use to adhere the two.
What do you mean by decouple? What does that mean?
So, as I mentioned, it once the linear impactor reaches the end of its stroke, it stops instantaneously, and the force of that stop just caused where we adhered the two together, just causes it to detach, basically break away. So, in essence, it doesn't matter because we only care about that. Remember, we're talking about that short duration of time, that 10 milliseconds. So once it breaks, it's already reached a common velocity to the taillight.
Okay. Can we go ahead and go to the next slide, please?
Oof.
What do you note about this impact?
So one of the things you'll see is kind of that dust cloud that you see. Again, that's all the particulates from the expanding foam that we use. So that's kind of what you see in the background there, kind of going over kind of the arm and the taillight there.
Do you note more damage or less damage to the taillight at 17 miles an hour versus the 10-mile-an-hour test?
There is more damage, yes.
Let's go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, it probably more damage to the actual arm.
What are we looking at here?
Yeah.
So you're looking at a top-down view from the high-speed camera. You'll see the taillight enter from the left, impacting the arm at about 17 miles per hour.
Okay, go ahead and play it. Ooh. Can you describe the decoupling that's shown here?
Absolutely. So as you can see, where the two are basically married together, right? It's kind of actually coming back together now. So that bond that we had, right? This is the most effective way that we could mount it to the impactor. It just became detached due to the force of that impactor stopping at the end of the stroke.
Understood. Next slide, please.
If you laugh at stroke.
What are we looking at here?
So in this slide, you're looking at another high-speed video. This is just a side view. Again, you're going to see the taillight enter the frame from the left, impacting the arm at 17 miles per hour.
Is this in slow motion as well?
This is in slow motion, correct, not real time.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
What do you note in terms of the deflection on the arm?
The arm, as we saw in the previous one, is accelerated up, so it's moving now at roughly a common velocity with what the impact speed was.
And what did you note about the damage to the taillight?
It was more significant than the 10-mile-an-hour test, which, again, there was very minimal damage to that, where several fragments of that red outer lens fractured as well as the clear lens.
Okay, next slide. And what is this depicting?
This is extracted frames from the previous video just showing right at contact, during contact, and post-contact.
Next slide, please. What is this a photograph of?
This photograph is depicting the damage to the taillight at the conclusion of the test, where again it's missing fragments of the outer red lens. I will note that the interior diffusers and plastic components are intact in this test.
When you say intact, what do you mean?
They are not damaged or broken.
At all?
Correct, at all.
Next slide, please. What is that a picture of?
Another photograph showing the taillight post-test. Again, no damage to the underlying diffusers in terms of being cracked, shattered, or broken.
And what did you note in terms of the damage to the outer acrylic, the red piece?
It broke into a few fragments, and I think on the next slide I depict those in a photograph.
Let's take a look at those. What is that?
So this is a photograph depicting the collection of the fragments post-test. I will note there's one clear piece, one red piece, another clear piece, and there is one more red piece in this bag. So the outer lens broke into approximately 4 pieces in the 17 mile per hour test. And I'll point out one other thing just because you can see it in the photograph. This is that 3D printed bracket that we used to bolt it onto the linear impactor with the foam on the other side that mounted it to the taillight.
Thank you for that. Next slide, please. What is this a picture of, or pictures of?
This is a side-by-side comparison
Wow.
showing a depiction of the 17 mile an hour test impact to the test taillight, comparing it to that of the subject taillight.
Were you able to reach any conclusions or opinions as to whether or not the damage to the subject taillight on the right is consistent with striking an arm at 17 miles per hour?
It's inconsistent from a damage perspective.
What's the basis of that opinion?
The test that I've just showed you all.
Was that testing that we've just talked about conducted in accordance with the scientific literature and generally accepted methodologies that you've earlier described?
Yes.
Is the damage to the right rear taillight consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 17 miles per hour?
No.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Slide 45, please.
So I think Brennan's going to say, but you didn't hit the arm with the side of the tail light. That's what I think he's going to come in.
What is this?
You're looking at photographs post-test of the sweatshirt that the ATD was wearing at the time of the impact.
Is this the 17 mile an hour impact?
Correct, yes.
Did you note any defects in the fabric of the right arm?
There were no punctures, holes, or fraying of the material during this impact test.
Based on this testing that you conducted in this case, is the damage that you saw of the shirt that John O'Keefe was wearing consistent or inconsistent with the shirt that's on the ATD?
It was inconsistent compared to the sweatshirt that Mr. John O'Keefe was wearing.
Based on that, do you have an opinion or a conclusion as to whether or not the damage on Mr. O'Keefe's clothing was consistent with being struck by the right rear taillight at 17 miles per hour?
It is inconsistent.
Next slide, please. What is this graph depicting?
So going back to these terms that we've talked about, this is the acceleration trace of the 17 mile an hour impact test. And you can see that we reach a peak acceleration at around 5 milliseconds, and that's at about almost 270 Gs.
You said 270 Gs?
Correct.
Or 217?
270.
Thank you.
70.
Did that have any significance on your analysis?
Yes.
What was that?
Well, we can use that to estimate, obviously we can integrate that to get the speed, but we can also estimate the force applied to the taillight with that information.
Can we go to the next slide, please? What is the delta V as it relates to the 17 mile an hour lab test?
So you can see, again, the arm initially at rest is accelerated up, increasing in speed, and then reaches just about 16 miles per hour, so reaching nearly a common velocity with the taillight at about 8 milliseconds in time.
Next slide, please. Did you conduct additional tests other than the 2 lab tests that we've talked about?
Yes, sir.
Describe just in general, and then we'll talk in more specifics. What were the tests that you undertook after the lab tests?
So we conducted 2 tests with a suspended ATD arm that was impacted by an exemplar 2021 Lexus LX570. We then conducted a test where the arm was then attached to a test dummy, and then our final test was a full-on impact to a test dummy.
Can we go to slide 48, please? What are we looking at in this slide?
This is the exemplar 2021 Lexus LX570 that was utilized during this test program.
Was this the same vehicle that was utilized in all the tests, C, D, E, and F?
Correct, yes.
If we could go to slide 49, the next slide. What's depicted in this photograph?
Well, so there's a number of things here, so I'll try to point them all out. So obviously, we talked about just now the Lexus here, the exemplar vehicle. We have a forklift that was hoisted up that ultimately was suspending the arm. I think I have an additional photograph that shows it close up. But the arm was suspended from the forklift at the correct height to interact with the taillight. We have our high-speed cameras set up under this umbrella. There's another one over here. Another thing you'll note is we brought out the chest freezer when we were installing these in the Lexus to, again, keep them at that steady state temperature for as long as possible.
If we could go to the next slide, please. What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is the approximate position that we plan to have contact occur in these tests. So as you can see, the forearm is in contact with the lift gate and the quarter panel taillight along with the elbow.
Why did you choose this configuration for the arm, the forearm, the hand, the elbow?
It was based upon my review of Dr. Welcher's work, and that he did through his static and dynamic test or paint test that this is how the arm was roughly oriented when the alleged contact occurred.
What were you trying to replicate in positioning the arm this direction, this way, as it relates to the SUV?
Well, I think as I stated earlier, it was to understand, okay, let's get beyond just simple geometry, aligning things. What happens to the arm, right? What are the accelerations? What's the damage, right? What we want to answer some of those other questions that Dr. Welcher didn't answer.
Does this...
So I'm going to strike the last part of that answer.
Does this configuration align with your understanding of Dr. Welcher's alignment of the arm as it relates to the vehicle?
Okay. Existing.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Good grief.
I know. Anytime he mentions Dr. Welcher didn't do, that is strike that. He is a good man. Shut up, Bev.
Well, he's not wrong. I mean,
well, no, it's just so stupid.
good. Nobody's even watching.
Yeah, because they already have their minds made up. They don't care.
I did see something Jess Machado said that the TVs in the courtroom are exceptionally better than last year, where they had your 90s set top box on the little rolling cart. This year they have HD TVs or 4K or something, and they're big and everything is crystal clear. So when they were showing the video with the tow truck and the car going up on the tow truck, it was clear as day. Whereas last year, they couldn't really see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, invest some of that money in a proper air conditioning system.
Right.
We have
Thank you, Your Honor. May I inquire?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. It's maybe self-explanatory. What was the speed of your first test out in the field?
15 miles per hour.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in these two photographs?
So on the left is a photograph of the installed preconditioned taillights just after the install, and on the right is a thermal image of that. And if I may just point out with the temperature. So one of the things you may see here is that due to the reflective chrome here, this is just an artifact of that being really reflective. So when we look at the average temperature profile of the taillight for this test, the average was approximately 17 degrees Fahrenheit for the taillight.
Was it important in this testing to account for the temperature variance of the taillight assembly?
Yes, absolutely. And I will note we certainly strive to maintain that. One of the things you actually may see in this photograph on the left are these pellets on the ground, and that is due to the fact during the installation process, one of my colleagues was positioned adjacent to the taillight fixtures, applying a compress of dry ice to help mitigate any heat transfer during the install process.
Let's move on to the next slide. What are we looking at in this overhead view?
This is it's a drone video, so you're going to see the Lexus accelerate from left to right, impacting the hybrid suspended arm in the area where you could see the umbrella.
Can you use your spotlight and orient us? Where are the vehicles and the testing locations?
Yes. So the Lexus is starting here. You will see it accelerate in reverse with the hybrid arm suspended in this area here.
Okay. Is this a video or just a still shot?
This is a drone video.
Let's go ahead and play that.
It's pretty fast.
Dr. Wolf, is that in real time or slowed down, sped up?
This is in real time.
Okay. Next video, please. What is this?
This is a camera that was mounted on top of the forklift that was suspending the arm.
Is this a still shot or is it a video?
It's a video.
What is the orientation of that arm as it relates to the vehicle that we'll see?
So it will make contact with the taillight, although I will note in this test, ultimately the contact ended up being more of a clip or a side swipe in this test.
Go ahead.
Oh, owie.
Look at the side swipe.
Did you see the impact area?
It's quick.
Right. What did you mean when you said more of a side swipe or a clip?
So I think the next couple of videos will help demonstrate that.
Let's move on to the next one. What are we looking at in this video? Or, I'm sorry, in this photograph?
So this is going to be a high speed or a slow-mo video. You're going to see the Lexus come in from the right and then move across the screen to the left, and you'll see contact occur between the taillight and the arm.
Okay.
Didn't even break it.
Wait, is there nobody driving? Oh, that's the back window. Never mind.
Can you explain for the jurors using this video what you meant by more of a side swipe or a clip?
Right. So this is where the hand and the wrist are kind of in the area of the quarter panel taillight, and then a portion of the forearm in contact with, what I previously said, the wrist and the hand in contact with the lift gate portion of the taillight, and then on the forearm is more in contact with the quarter panel taillight.
Okay. Can we move to the next slide? And what is this angle?
This is, same test, just a different angle with the high-speed cameras in slow motion.
And this is at 15 miles per hour, correct?
15 miles an hour, correct.
Can you explain for the jurors, given the fact that this is suspended, does that have any impact on the ultimate analysis or reconstruction, rather than being attached to an ATT?
Effectively, mass is mass. So whether we have an arm that is suspended or attached, again, it's the arm is on a joint, right? So the arm can accelerate freely of the rest of the body, right? So if anything, even if it is attached to the body, there may actually be some additional force associated with that, just because there could be more mass attached to it.
Understood. Okay, let's go ahead and play this video. Can we go to the next slide, please? What are we looking at in these three photographs?
So you're looking at, on the left, starting from left to right, just at contact, and then just after contact, and then post-contact. So as I mentioned, you can see that in this first one at contact, again, we don't have, the hand isn't and the arm aren't positioned as far out on the previous tests, and the hand is in the area and the wrist of the lift gate taillight, with part of the forearm in contact with the quarter panel taillight. And as you saw in the video, essentially the arm just kind of moves out of the way of the vehicle as it comes by.
Understood. Next slide, please. What are we looking at here?
This is a photograph of the test vehicle subsequent to the test, depicting the, I'll say, lack of damage to the taillights.
Describe what you did see in terms of damage or lack of damage on the taillight.
There was no damage or fracturing to the taillights.
Describe the orientation of the arm in this particular test that you said was more of a side swipe. What was the orientation of the arm to the taillight in terms of how much of the arm touched the taillight? It's probably a clunky question, but I think you understand it.
I don't know if I could break it down into, I think just qualitatively speaking, like I said, it appears to be the hand and the wrist and kind of the lower portion of the forearm, maybe to the mid forearm or so.
So nothing on the upper arm?
Correct.
Making contact?
Correct, nothing on the upper arm, yes.
Okay. If we can move past this slide and onto the next slide. What is this depicting?
So this is depicting the test taillights of the 15 mile per hour impact into the hybrid arm compared to that of the subject taillight.
Was there any notable damage at all on the on the exemplar taillight following test C at 15 miles an hour?
The only thing there may have been was some very slight abrasions maybe to the plastic, but there certainly was no breaking or fracturing of the lens assembly.
Were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 15 miles per hour?
In this test, it was inconsistent.
Even in a side swipe?
Correct.
Was that testing that we just saw done in accordance with scientific literature and generally accepted methodologies in the area of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Is the damage to the right rear taillight of the subject vehicle consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 15 miles per hour in a side swipe configuration?
It's inconsistent.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad do you think my Oedipus complex is? I would say on a scale of, wait, wouldn't it be, oh yeah, it is Oedipus complex. I would say that you wrote the book on it. So maybe 11? I don't know. And in real numbers, 16 miles per hour to, it's roughly 25.7 kilometers per hour. Thank you for the super chat. And let's go back to this.
15 miles per hour in a side swipe configuration.
It's inconsistent.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Can we move to the next slide, please? What are we looking at in this graph?
So you're looking at the hand acceleration over time. So you can see that because, as you saw in the previous video and slides, the hand initially made contact with the taillight. So that gets accelerated up first. So we're getting peak accelerations in this test for the hand of about 254 Gs. And yes, over a period of about a little over 6 seconds or 6 milliseconds or so.
What was the arm or the appendage outfitted with to determine the data on this graph?
Right. So if you think back to the lab testing that we did, right, because we didn't have, and again, this is kind of why we did the testing incrementally as we went about it, but in the lab test, we didn't have a way to mount the lift gate assembly to also evaluate that interaction. So when we moved outside the full scale vehicle testing, we had a lift gate taillight, obviously the full vehicle. So we also instrumented the hand with an accelerometer as well as the forearm. So we were able to measure the acceleration of both the hand and the forearm in these tests.
Can we move to the next slide, please? And what are we looking at here?
So this is the, the acceleration of the arm. So you can see that it reaches a peak around 5 milliseconds at about, looks like just under 200 Gs.
And the next slide. What's depicted in this graph?
So this is doing, again, the integration of the acceleration data for the hand to determine what speed did the hand get accelerated up to. And you can see that at the onset of this, it's at rest, it's impacted and then gets up almost to 15 miles an hour in 4 milliseconds. Ultimately does reach at about 18 milliseconds, it does reach that 15, but it's nearly at 15 at contact.
Thank you. The next slide, please. And what is this delta V showing us?
So this is showing the change in speed of the arm. And again, because the hand was, and the wrist was more of the central impact to the ATD arm, this ultimately saw less acceleration, therefore less of a change in speed. So at around 6 milliseconds, well, roughly actually about 1 millisecond after it started to increase in acceleration, it's at about 5 miles per hour.
Is that reflected in the fact that the arm pivoted?
Yes,
spun?
there's some rotation going on, so it's not translating or accelerating.
Understood. Can we move to the next slide, please? Test D. What was the speed that you undertook in test D as in Delta?
So this is a 29 mile per hour impact into the suspended hybrid arm.
We move to the next slide. What are we looking at in this series of photographs?
So on the left is my colleague, again, compressing the taillight while we install the upper tail, the liftgate taillight to, again, try to maintain that steady state temperature. Over here on the right is the thermal image of the taillight after the install. So the average temperature of this taillight during the test was approximately 17 degrees Fahrenheit.
Next slide, please. Staying with test D, what is this depicting?
This is a drone video showing a top-down perspective of the test with the Lexus starting on the left-hand part of the screen, accelerating in reverse into the suspended hybrid arm over here at the location of the forklift.
Okay. If we could watch this video, please. Do your next slides show, there you go, the suspended arm. What are we looking at here?
So this is a video camera that was positioned on top of the forklift looking down at the arm. So you'll see the vehicle move from bottom to top as this video plays.
By the way, Dr. Wolf, what are the purple and white lines that we see have predominated? Oof. I'm sorry, I was talking over that.
Sorry, I
That's
didn't.
Okay. What are the purple and white lines that we see?
So those are guidelines to help. I will note that this is kind of like a needle in a haystack. It's very hard to hit this small of a target. So just served as a guideline to reference as we're accelerating rearward into this.
Is this in real time?
This is in real time, yes.
What's the speed that the vehicle is entering the frame at?
29 miles per hour.
Thank you. What happened to the arm in terms of its suspension?
It actually gets ripped off from the mounting location.
Is there a reason you believe physically that that arm was ripped off from the suspension tethers?
Well, certainly there was enough force to break the tie lines to the forklift.
Was there a test value of those tie lines?
I think they were rated at 150 pounds.
What does that suggest in terms of the force that was exerted, just before we get to the other testing, the force that was exerted on the arms to tear off the tie lines?
Well, it indicates that the arm saw at least 150 pounds of force.
Okay. Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this video?
So this is going to be a slow motion video. You'll see the Lexus accelerate in reverse, making contact with the arm. And again, this is the 29 mile per hour impact test.
Okay.
Whoa.
That is so fast.
Next slide, please.
Come on.
And what is this?
This is a video, a high-speed video, so slow motion of test D at 29 miles per hour into the ATD arm that is suspended. So you'll see the Lexus enter the frame from the right and impact the arm.
Okay. Was this strike more reflective of what you were attempting to replicate?
Yes, this was a more central impact to the arm, yes.
Thank you. Next slide, please. And what is this?
So this is a high-speed or slow-motion video depicting the test D at 29 miles per hour, just a different perspective than the previous video.
Okay. Next slide. And what are we looking at here?
So this is extracted frames from the high-speed video. So starting out left to right, this is roughly at first contact with the majority of the hand, well, the hand and majority of the forearm in contact with the liftgate taillight, with a portion of the elbow in contact with the quarter panel taillight.
Can I stop you right there on that far left frame? Does that fairly replicate what you were attempting to approximate in terms of the orientation of the arm versus the taillight?
Yes, more of a central impact compared to that first test at 15, yes.
Is that more or less consistent with what you saw in Dr. Welcher's test where he had his arm in that still shot associated with the geometry of the car?
Sustained.
Is this consistent with what you were trying to replicate after your review of Dr. Welcher's report?
Sustained. Can I ask you differently?
What were you trying to replicate, or why were you trying to replicate this at the 29 mile an hour test in this particular orientation?
We were trying to see, based upon Dr. Welcher's orientation, what happens to the arm in terms of the acceleration and the damage to the taillight at that configuration at contact.
Okay, next slide, please.
Hold on. Objection. You did not use blue paint. I'm failing to see blue paint. That Lexus is the wrong color.
Oh my gosh. It broke the wrong light too.
What are we looking at?
So this is a photograph depicting the damage to the liftgate taillight as well as the quarter panel taillight.
And what do you note in terms of that damage?
So on the liftgate taillight, a significant portion of that thick 5mm red outer lens is fractured and broken off. The underlying diffusers are still in place. There was a small crack in, I believe it was the upper diffuser here. The quarter panel taillight had the clear section damaged with the outer lens missing, along with some fragments from the outer portion of the red part of the lens.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is another photograph depicting the quarter panel taillight. As I indicated, there is portions of the red lens cover missing. The interior diffusers remained largely intact in this test.
Next slide. What is this side-by-side depicting?
This is showing the results of the 29-mile-per-hour impact test to the test vehicle compared to that of the subject taillight.
Given that orientation of test D, were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether or not the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 29 miles per hour?
It was inconsistent.
What's the basis for that opinion, Dr. Wolf?
The results of this test.
And was that testing conducted in accordance with the scientific literature and generally accepted methodologies in the field of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Is the damage to the right rear taillight consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 29 miles per hour? When I say the right rear taillight, I mean of the subject vehicle.
Sustained as to that.
With regard to your opinion concerning whether the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 29 miles per hour, do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
Next slide, please. What is depicted in this graph?
So this is looking at the acceleration of the hand in the 29-mile-per-hour impact test with peak accelerations close to 800 Gs at 2 milliseconds.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this graph?
This is the acceleration of the arm, reaching peak acceleration of about 500 Gs.
You indicated 800 Gs in the last graph. What's the difference? What's the difference in the delta between the 500 and the 800?
Between the hand and the arm?
Understood. Which one suffered or was subject to 800 Gs?
That would be the hand.
And which one was subject to the 500 Gs?
That would be the arm.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this graph?
So this is looking at the change in speed. So what speed did the hand get up to as a result of the impact? So we can see that in about 3 milliseconds, the arm is moving nearly at almost 25 miles per hour. And then a little bit later, again, this is still very quick in time, at about 14 milliseconds, it's at about 30 miles per hour.
You did address this. I mean, I see
Next
what you're
slide, please.
saying. It depends on what the jury picks
What's
up.
depicted in this graph?
So this is looking at the change in speed of the arm as a result of the contact. So starting here at about 2 milliseconds, the arm accelerates up to, by 8 milliseconds, we're at about 35 miles per hour. And this, you may be wondering, why are we getting more speed than what the input was? And that's because you get a phenomenon known as restitution. Basically, there's an elastic collision between the two where you can get almost a bouncing effect. So when you have something that weighs 6,000 pounds striking something that's much, much lighter than that, it can actually cause it to accelerate up to a greater velocity than the impact speed.
Next slide, please. Test E, 24-mile-an-hour impact test. What is that?
So this is a 24-mile-an-hour impact test to the ATD arm attached to a test dummy.
Next slide, please.
There we go.
Why did you utilize 24 miles an hour for this test?
So it's my understanding that this is
There you
the
go.
upper end. There is a triggering event of, I believe it's 1162.2, and I think at the end of that data, the speed is approximately 24 miles per hour. So we did a test at the end point, if you will, in that data set.
What is this photograph showing in terms of the orientation of the arm and the hybrid test dummy, or ATD?
So the orientation is to depict, again, the orientation that Dr. Welcher indicated in his static and dynamic test to show what happens when again, that ATD arm that we had is attached to a test dummy and is struck at 24 miles per hour.
Next slide, please. And what is this?
So this is a thermal image of the taillights just after the install with the average temperature at about just over 33 degrees Fahrenheit.
Next slide. And what are we looking at?
So you're looking at a top-down drone video with the Lexus here on the left that will accelerate in reverse up to 24 miles an hour, striking the ATD arm.
Let's watch that, please.
No, he did do a pirouette,
Next slide.
but he wasn't launched
What are we looking at in this slide?
7 feet.
So this is a top-down video from atop of the forklift, or where the arm is suspended, attached to the dummy. So you're going to see the vehicle enter from the bottom into
hat.
going to the top of the screen.
Next slide. What is this view?
It's just another perspective. This is a slow motion video where you'll see the Lexus in reverse. I think this one actually has kind of a long build up before it starts here.
Oh, slow-mo. The shoe stayed on. He didn't go flying into Brian Albert's bedroom window. His hat's not on the curb. He doesn't have a hat. There's no blue paint. And the car's the wrong color.
And could we go to the next slide, please? And what is this?
So this is a perspective from the high-speed camera, so a slow motion video with the Lexus reversing into the ATD arm at 24 miles per hour.
Before you play this, Dr. Wolf, I failed to ask this, it may be obvious. After each of the tests, C, D, E, F, were you replacing the taillight with new exemplar taillights that had been temperature accounted for?
Yes, every test had a new set of quarter panel taillights, as well as liftgate taillights. And even in the test where the taillight in the 50 mile an hour test where the taillight was not damaged, we still put on new taillights. We did not repurpose or reuse any of the taillights.
Okay, thank you. If you could play this for us, please.
Oof.
You cannot tell me that no one would have not saw that.
Or heard it.
Yeah. And Yeah, no scratches on his arm.
Next slide. In this configuration, was the ATD outfitted with the hoodie that you've earlier described?
Yes.
At the time you outfitted the ATD with the hoodie in this configuration before this test E, did you confirm that the sleeve, the right sleeve, was damaged or undamaged?
After this test?
No, before.
Before, it was undamaged before the test.
Okay. What are we looking at in this slide?
So this is still frames from the high speed. So starting out on the left here, just at contact. So the forearm making contact with the liftgate taillight, and then the upper part of the forearm and the elbow making contact, a direct hit into the quarter panel taillight. And the middle here is just after contact, and on the right is post contact.
Thank you. Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this video, or in this picture?
So this is a overall photograph depicting the taillights subsequent to this test at 24 miles per hour. I will note that there's no damage to the liftgate taillight, and then there is damage to the quarter panel taillight.
Is there any damage to the internal diffusers on this taillight?
So if I go to the next photograph, if I may.
Please.
So you can see here, there is this kind of thicker, it's actually not a crack. So I'm looking at the clear diffuser here with the dots that you see. This line that you see, kind of opaque. I don't know if you've got a laser pointer to.
May I?
Yes.
Just so there's no confusion, thank you. So the line right here that's part of the assembly. So that's just a part of how the plastic is molded. There's a very small crack right here in the underlying diffuser, but all of the remaining part of the diffuser in terms of this portion here and here are all intact, and same with this portion of it.
What about the chrome piece that's running between the diffusers?
I don't believe that was damaged during this test, no.
And what about the clear acrylic toward the top left of that taillight housing?
It was partially fractured, but not the entire outer portion of it.
Next slide, please.
But I kind of disagree. I mean, yeah, the taillight's broken, but they're showing that the inside diffusers aren't broken, the housing isn't broken, and also that clearly would have like shattered the bone in his elbow. So,
well, that's the thing, is they're going to pair this, and then we're going to get to see what it would do to an arm.
Yeah.
But,
and then they keep
like,
saying there's no damage to the hoodie either.
Yeah, that's a big thing too. You have to start listening to is they're showing no damage to that hoodie.
Yeah.
I mean,
What is this depicting?
It's gonna break. But
So this is a photograph depicting the quarter panel taillight subsequent to the 24-mile-an-hour impact test with the ATD arm compared to that of the subject taillight.
Based on this test, were you able to reach any opinions and conclusions as to whether the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking John O'Keefe's arm at 24 miles an hour?
Sustained in that form.
But where is it? Where'd it go? Oh. We do have more knowledge, but he isn't done yet. I think that's important to note as well.
And you have to think about it, like really, they're not dummies. They can see,
Yeah.
Oh, look at that arm getting hit with that taillight. Yeah, it breaks at a certain mile per hour, because I mean it didn't break at the 10. It cracked. But when we got a higher speed, but then once we hear what the injuries are, it's gonna put it all together and make a lot more sense.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Legendary. What's the speed limit in bed? 68, because at 69, you have to turn around. Thank you for that one. Little levity.
Were you able to reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the damage to the subject taillight is consistent with striking an arm at 24 miles per hour?
Based upon the test results, it's inconsistent with striking an arm.
Why do you, on what do you base that opinion?
I base it upon the test results that I've shown in terms of the video and the data acquisition.
Can you describe that in a little bit more detail?
So during this test, we had the instrumented hybrid arm outstretched from the test dummy with the accelerometer on the hand and the forearm. We had data acquisition on the vehicle, monitoring the speeds of the vehicle. We accelerated that vehicle into the arm at 24 miles an hour to conduct a dynamic impact test to collect data certainly about the acceleration that the arm experienced, but then also make observations about the damage that we observed to the taillight.
Do you hold that opinion that we've just discussed to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes.
And were your tests conducted in accordance with methodologies that are generally accepted in the field of accident reconstruction in this particular test cycle?
Yes.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this series of photos?
So these are photographs depicting, excuse me, the test clothing. Again, prior to the test, there were no holes or damage to the sweatshirt. That was the same post-test. We did not see make any observations with respect to any fraying, holes, punctures to the material of the sleeve.
Was there any damage whatsoever observed on the right sleeve of that ATD?
No.
Next slide, please.
Yes.
What are we looking at in terms of this graph?
So what you're looking at in this graph is the acceleration of the hand reaching a peak acceleration just after 10 milliseconds of approximately 435 Gs.
Next slide. What are we looking at here?
This is the acceleration of the arm during this 24 mile an hour impact test, reaching peak Gs of about 300 at 4 milliseconds.
And the next slide. What is this delta V graph showing us?
So this is showing the change in speed of the hand as a result of the impact, ultimately getting up to approximately 24 miles an hour, which again is the impact velocity of the Lexus.
And how fast did it get up to 24 miles an hour?
In probably about 10 milliseconds or less.
Next slide, please. And what is this delta V showing us?
This is showing the change in speed of the arm going to about just over, looks like about 22 miles per hour at about 10 milliseconds. So total window of time of about 8 milliseconds that it took to get up to that 22 mile an hour speed or so.
Understood. And next slide, please. Did you undertake, by the way, another question. On that, when the ATD was oriented in test E, as an echo, where it was standing with its right arm out, and the impact was on the right arm, what happened to the mass of the body of the ATD?
It rotated.
Was it projected at all off to the side?
No.
Was it projected rearward?
No.
Was that rotation expected based on your experience?
Yes.
What is the 29 mile an hour impact test in test F?
So this was a test that we conducted with a what's known as a rescue Randy or a test dummy that was a full-on impact to the right rear corner of the Lexus.
Full on impact?
Let's take a look at the next slide, please. With regard to test E, if I could please ask you about that. I want to go back to that test even though we're looking at this one. With test E, was that reflective of a direct impact on the arm itself?
Correct, right in the area of the elbow to the quarter panel taillight.
As opposed to a side swipe on the arm?
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Did you undertake to test a direct impact on the body of the ATD in this test?
Of the rescue Randy dummy?
Yes.
Yes.
What are we looking at here?
So this is the intended impact configuration with the Rescue Randy suspended here by the forklift, and again, kind of in the path of the profile at that right rear corner.
How much does this test dummy weigh?
Approximately 200 pounds.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is a video. We had a little bit of a false start, so our high speeds weren't triggered, but thankfully we were able to pull our surveillance video to get at least an overall video of the test taking place.
Do you have, well, let me ask you that did you intend to have high-speed video just like you've had in every other test?
Yes.
What went wrong? Something
Just
didn't get
miscommunication between the driver and the rest of the test engineers.
Got it.
So false start.
Okay. Was the taillight housing reassembled for this test?
Yes, it had a preconditioned new set of taillights on it.
And other than the taillight being damaged several times that we've seen, was there any other damage to the rear of that exemplar vehicle?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Other than the taillight damage that you rotated through in your testing, C through F, was there any other inherent damage to the the lift gate that existed when the exemplar vehicle was received by you?
When it was received, no. It was
Okay.
in good condition. No defects or damage were noted.
Okay. What are we going to expect to see in this video?
So in this video, you'll see in the surveillance video, the Lexus will come from the right to left, strike the Rescue Randy, and then you'll see the Rescue Randy projected and slide on the ground.
Okay.
Oof. Ouchies.
Can you play that one more time, please?
Oof. Next
slide, please. What are we looking at in this series of photographs?
So this is a extract from our V-Box software and data acquisition system. So on the top, you'll see the video. On the bottom is the data. So this is another feed that we had of video. This was triggered. So we do have data from this perspective. So what you'll see is my colleague will move away from the assembly with the dry ice, and then the vehicle will accelerate in reverse.
That was my question. The blue, that's dry ice, gloves?
You can't, you don't want to touch dry ice with your bare hands. So
Okay.
it's, he's wearing gloves. He's capturing the thermal images now.
Well, that would make me sick.
Next slide, please. And what are we looking at in this?
So these are extracted frames from that video you just saw from the data acquisition system. So on the left here is just before contact between the test dummy and the Lexus. On the right is just at contact.
Next slide, please. And what are we seeing in these series of photos?
So this is obviously during the collision sequence. The body now has loaded into the lift gate and the back window. What you're seeing here is the back window shattering. And this is just a few split second later in time where, again, the body is continuing to move with the vehicle as it's contacted.
Next slide. And what is this?
Look at that.
This depicts the post-impact damage to the rear of the Lexus. As I noted, the rear window is completely shattered. There's deformation and crush to the liftgate section of the vehicle. The bumper step was popped out, and then there was some minor fracturing in the bumper cover at the lower level.
Did you note anything regarding the internal components of the exemplar taillight, even at this direct impact?
So the The taillight, as you can see, it blew out the outer lens cover. I believe the part of the clear diffusers were actually still in place. I think the lower one might have been fractured here, but I think the upper one was still in place.
That's crazy.
At 29 miles an hour with a direct impact, did the exemplar taillight exhibit the same type of damage to the diffuser as the subject taillight?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
More or less damage in this photo to the diffuser specifically than in the subject taillight?
Well, I think there was more in the subject taillight. As I mentioned, I believe the top diffuser
More
on this
damage?
was correct.
Okay, that was my question. And is there another slide at the on the back end of this one?
That's it.
Okay, we can have the lights.
So I'm just reading on X during that whole thing. Aiden wrote, Hank Brennan is staring at Dr. Wolf, just straight up glaring at him in the most angry way possible.
He knows damage to his case.
Yeah. This is crazy. That was definitely interesting. I mean,
I
even
love
if not the exact condition, there's no snow, but I think it'd be hella dangerous to add snow to this. It's already looking a little terrifying, to be honest.
Well, when you see it done like that, it's like, how would nobody have saw it happen? How would nobody have heard anything?
How would it happen?
Yeah, and there'd be a lot more damage.
If you're saying this woman was drunk, and they have probably somebody who's done this kind of thing several times before and knows how to reverse at high speeds. But yeah, you're telling me that Karen could have done that, not hit the Jeep that was in the way, or even the mailbox if it wasn't,
Well, now it makes me
would
laugh
know.
too, because yeah, she would know. And his whole 8 mile, well, it could have been up to 8 miles an hour thing is totally debunked, in my opinion.
Yeah. This was, I mean, yeah, sure, the taillight shattered. That's fine and dandy, but his arm wasn't broken, and there's no way that the scratches, whatever went through. I mean, do you think he rolled up his sleeve while he was standing there? I don't think so.
And then he's making a point of those diffusers and how they are broken and how even at these impacts, it didn't even break them. So.
Yeah. And the arm was barely bruised. Yes. Sorry, but it's not adding up for me.
Nope. It's just solidified.
Dr. Wolf, you
Yeah.
conducted tests at what miles per hour? Tell me the sequence.
It would be 10 miles per hour, 17 miles per hour, 15 miles per hour, 29 miles per hour, 24 miles per hour, and then a full-on hit at 29 miles per hour.
Regarding all of the tests you conducted, what did you observe with regard to the damage, if any, to the internal components of the quarter panel taillight? And I'm talking about the chrome pieces and the diffusers.
It was less in all of the tested taillights than that of the subject taillight.
Did you reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the damage to the right rear taillight of the subject 2021 Lexus is consistent with an impact to John O'Keefe's right arm during a high-speed reversing maneuver?
Sustained in that form, Mr. Jackson.
Did you reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the damage to the right rear taillight of the subject vehicle is consistent or inconsistent with an impact to a right arm during a high-speed reversing maneuver?
It was inconsistent.
What's the basis for that opinion?
All of the test data that we did from the laboratory testing, moving up to full-scale vehicle testing, all of the collected data in terms of the photographs, the observations, all the acceleration data collected. So all of the testing that we've walked through in this PowerPoint, along with certainly that was based upon all generally accepted and peer-reviewed methodologies in the accident reconstruction community.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty based on your experience, training, and education?
Yes.
Did you reach any opinions or conclusions as to relating to the punctures, holes in the hoodie that you saw that was related to John O'Keefe?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion or conclusion as to whether or not the damage that you saw to the hoodie related to John O'Keefe is consistent or inconsistent with a impact from a right rear taillight of the subject SUV?
It was inconsistent.
And what do you base that opinion on?
Based upon all of the impact testing that we did with the clothed ATD arm in the laboratory as well as the field.
In any of the testing that you did you ever see taillight pieces cut, puncture, or fray the sleeve of that hoodie?
No.
The exemplar hoodie, I should say.
Correct.
Did you reach any opinions or conclusions as to whether the rear taillight of the subject SUV was involved in a center of mass strike of a pedestrian at a high speed rearward maneuver?
Yes.
What is your opinion?
That the damage to the subject Lexus is inconsistent with a center of mass hit.
What do you base that opinion on?
The testing that we conducted in that last test that you just saw.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, Dr. Wolf?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right.
We're probably going to go to lunch,
We're gonna
but
go
let me,
first. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you, Brennan, member for 19 months. Moist o'clock, baby. Let's hit the whore bar. Thank you for the $5. Who is complaining that this isn't enough? This is devastating. Also hilarious that their guy got this and then put blue paint on it in response. Moist.
Brandon, you would be surprised at who's complaining it's not enough. You would be.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't be surprised, what I'm saying.
Yeah. All right, let's see if there's
Any place
anything.
for break, or do you want to get started?
What's preference?
Lunch is on here.
Juris, why don't we let you have your lunch? Okay, so we'll come back.
You just said lunch isn't there yet.
We'll come back ready to go at 1:30.
1:30.
All rise in court, please.
All right. I think that's all we got.
The pieces did go flying, but not very far. Seemed like they were all in the same, pretty much in the area of the road.
Yeah. I am. Yeah, I mean, sure, they broke, but that's another good point. They didn't go flying like all the way to the right
Mm-hmm.
and into what would be the yard. Yes, we should have a Rumble stream. I will let Baker know when we finish this one. If he's alive. Yeah, he's alive. Yeah, that was so much better.
So much better. Julie, what are they saying? I know.
I need to know.
You're probably like, this is all BS. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah. Goodness gracious.
This chat ain't going though. You lucky. What? That chat ain't going. Okay. It breaks at what speed? I think it was 15 or something like that. I don't want to know what Hank's going to have for lunch. Judge tuna? I don't know.
Yeah, that's what it is, Julie. Oh my God. This is why I said earlier that these people don't have a valid opinion. They are just, they are just absolute idiots. Dr. Wolf has rent to pay, so he has to agree with the defense. Yeah, that's because this is where this is not
I'm
his,
sorry, but I'm
he's
pretty
not
sure Dr.
making
Wolf
crap from
owns his
them.
home.
I'm pretty sure Dr. Wolf makes just fine enough money without this defense team being in his life. I'm sure he's doing just fine.
Yeah. And thank you for becoming a member. I don't know where you're a member, but oh, here. Thank you. Oh, look, it's Baker. How you feeling? No. She's repeating what's on Plevin's chat.
Yeah, she's telling us what Plevin's chat is saying, Brandon.
Yeah.
Not what Julie has an opinion of. If she did, I'd be like, Julie, are you okay?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm sweating like Farrell in church. Is it hot or are you sick?
Tell Farrell to go dip her head in the holy water. She'll be fine.
No, Baker.
Oh, Baker's.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go get some food. We'll be back here in about 30 minutes or so. And
Farrell, it's what I did. They were making fun of me because I thought that's what you had to do when you went to church.
yeah, it is hot out there. That's why I'm in. Baker's sick. All right. Well, I'm going to end it, and we will be back in roughly 30 minutes, and we'll see you on the other side.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Did she just want to it?
There we go. Good thing we stuck around for that court TV.
Wait, watch the court reporter cat lady right here. She's like, oh, I'm whipping myself.
She did a pit check. Oh, court reporter lady, no.
Listen, Turtle, all right?
Step right up to the witness stand. You can have a seat.
Oh my freaking holy moly. Oh, where's Jamie? Where's Mo?
So I remind you, you're
Holy
still under oath.
majoli.
That still carries over.
I feel like Lally has a kink that involves diapers for some reason.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.